across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. A very good morning on a very, very hot sunny day. Oh, heat wave, we're all going to die. No, let's enjoy a little bit of August heat, guys. That's what we do here at Talk. Just enjoy summer. I know it's old-fashioned, but, you know, we'll probably survive the day. But make sure you carry a bottle of water with you at all times because, of course, human beings have always had a bottle of water with them at all times. Otherwise, human race would have not survived. There's your public health warning from Auntie Julia this morning. Anyway, a very good morning. Happy Monday. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is fabulous to have your company. Got quite a bit to talk about, as per usual. Let's get straight to it. Let's tell you about it. Labour has freed 26,000 criminals early, including hundreds of serious offenders who were handed sentences of more than a decade behind bar. So definitely no one to be worried about to have them back on the streets earlier than planned. These are astonishing figures for the early release scheme, suggesting 45,000 lags could have their sentences cut in the first year. Oh, we could have just built some more prisons. I know, crazy thinking. Meanwhile, there's another way of getting rid of people from our jails. More foreign criminals are set to be deported straight after their jail term. So you get convicted. If you're sentenced to a jail term, you are automatically going to be deported. Well, only if you're from a certain 23 countries. And by the way, those 23 countries don't include apart from Albania, countries where we're actually seeing an awful lot of foreign criminals from. But there we are. We'll see how that works. Keir Starmer's also, his Chagos Island deal is back in the news. We were told it cost £3.4 billion. Well, I don't think many people believe that, did they? Well, they were right not to, because it turns out it cost more than 10 times that. 35 billion quid of Euromire taxpayers' money to give away a piece of land that we already own and then to sort of lease part of it back for the Diego Garcia military base. Another absolutely brilliant deal from the Prime Minister and, of course, all his aides. We'll talk about that later as well. Plus, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has been back in the news. He's warned that the small boats crisis has made British women and girls less safe, and he said he has fears for his own 3 young daughters against the backdrop of illegal migrants with what he calls medieval attitudes crossing the channel. His boss, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is actually going to be in Epping talking to protesters at the Bell Hotel, Asylum Hotel, this morning. We may get some words from her a little bit later in the show. I would love to hear from you on any and all of the topics we are talking about, but in particular about the thousands of foreign criminals who will be deported, we are told, as soon as they are convicted, as long as they've got a prison sentence, but they'll be unable to appeal until they are abroad. There's no guarantee, though, that they'll serve any prison time abroad, which seems to me to be a little bit of a flaw in the system, don't you think? Plus, of course, it doesn't include an awful lot of people who come over to this country and commit crimes from countries where we don't have that deal. But I want to hear your reaction to that. Another wonderful Monday morning announcement from the government that we're all supposed to feel, oh, they're totally on top of things, when actually they really, really aren't. And it's a drop in the ocean, and actually it's just a cost-saving measure rather than tackling the real issue, which is the large number of people in this country who commit crimes and who are not convicted and, well, not even arrested, let alone charged and convicted, and don't actually serve any jail time. And if they do, they get sent home early. But also an awful lot of people who are from abroad who do so. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one standard network rate message. Delighted to say someone who's never shy of having an opinion is commentator Sam Armstrong, who joins us once again on a Monday morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, another day, another Monday. You came in this morning and went, every Monday morning there's another announcement, something to do. It's always something to do with crime, prisons, foreign criminals. They've managed to look, this is the dream. They literally put their hand into the sort of the generator headline box at Downing Street, and they turned it round. They went, oh, foreign criminals, oh, we like that. Deport, yeah, we like that. From prisons, yeah, oh, yeah, we've got this sorted. It's not quite what they're saying, though, is it? As it often isn't.
It's voters are angry, look busy politics.
Yeah.
Every single Monday for the last 50 Mondays of this government, we have seen an announcement about how they are clamping down on normally something to do with illegal migration. And they expect you, me, everybody listening to this show to believe them. They have finally, Julia, they have solved migration. Pull the other one. Honestly, I've got to the stage where I'm going to bring in a shredder on a Monday morning. and every week where this piffle, absolute piffle that this government, my government comes out with saying that they have solved this problem, which they have no interest in resolving, no interest whatsoever, it can go straight in there. Because I actually think it's an insult at this stage to our listeners to even give them the credence.
Well, that's it. You have to discuss these stories because they are front page news, and again, and also to expose them. But that said, again, and I feel the need to point this out, you lot didn't do anything about any of this stuff, did you? But your Tory lot were bleeding useless.
Julia, I couldn't
build any prisons.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I couldn't agree actually with Nigel Farage more when he describes it as a uni party, because exactly the same civil servants that don't care about this issue, that were sat there when Suella Braverman was running it, when Priti Patel was running it, when any of the Conservative secretaries of state were running it, who came up with went into that same drawer, pulled out those same stories. They're still there. They're still running it. They're still pretending to do something about it. And dealing with this requires a massive, totemic sweeping away of the entire organisation of those people that have been running this state.
It really does. And it's going to cost money. And I, for one, am more than happy to pay the money. Now, what's interesting is we're told, so if you're a murderer or a terrorist and you've been convicted, you will not be facing deportation in these circumstances. But you could commit, attempted murder, GBH, you could leave someone paralysed for life. You could rape somebody or a child, and you would still be able to be deported under this. And when she was asked in the media this morning about what would happen to deportation, would they serve time behind bars abroad? I mean, I'm quite happy for someone who commits foreign criminal crime here. If you have to go back to Albania, I have a funny feeling that Albanian prisons are a little bit harder than British prisons. But Alex Davies-Jones, who's the Home Office Minister, who's put out and about today, who just did that whole thing of just parroting the same line again. We're going to save money, but we're going to save money. We're not going to have to pay £54,000 a year to pay for... Do you know what? I'm more than happy for my taxes to go towards the 54 grand to keep a rapist behind bars. I'm more than happy. Tell me where to send the bill. But she said there'll be a return to the country of origin, and it will be up to that country what they do with them, whether they put them in prison in that country or whether they choose for them to do as they wish. So realistically, under this scenario, someone could be convicted of a serious crime, sentenced to prison, booted out of the country, assuming that actually happens. They can't even boot them out now, and then they might not serve any time at all. I would rather pay for them to do time here and then deport them. My concern about foreigners in our prisons is not that it's costing us money. That is not my number one concern. I mean, for the love of God. But the thing is also, this is about 23 countries they've got deals with. They've added a bunch of countries to this list. I've got to be honest with you, this list is an interesting one. So previously, offenders were being returned to Finland, Nigeria, Estonia, Albania, Belize, Mauritius, Tanzania and Kosovo for remote hearings. Now, in terms of the countries where in terms of prisoners from abroad, Albania is number one. We've got something like 11%. Polish, Romanian, Irish, Jamaican and Pakistani are the next on the list. Indians and others. So really only got a couple there. I mean, Albania is the only one we're really concerned about in terms of serious numbers. The countries they have added, Angola, Botswana, India, Kenya, Malaysia, Uganda, Zambia, but they've also added, Australia, Bulgaria and Canada, Latvia. Do we have a massive issue with Canadians
Julia,
committing crimes here and we can't deport? Is that a big issue? I mean, people are talking about it on the streets around my way all the time. There's sodding Canadians coming over here, committing those crimes against us. All that Canadian shoplifting, all that Canadian sexual harassment of 15-year-old girls on the way home from school. It's the talk of the sodding town.
They've got these Canadian barber shops on every high street. Every high street.
Absolutely.
But Julia,
they're the Uber drivers.
This is literally what they have had to resort to now. They've got so little that they have to do something performative in the hope, the forlorn hope that we will still be convinced by it. It isn't working. That is why that this Labour Party, this Labour government that was elected just 1 year ago with a record majority has plunged so quickly into chaos, which is they don't know, they can't appreciate. The likes of Alex Davies-Jones just can't even think for themselves. And I mean, they really can't think if you're going out and just parroting these lines over and over again like a robot. They cannot understand that this country is literally in a crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
We have descended so far that this same nonsense, just coming in and just tinkering, is only going to end in disaster.
No, completely.
And until major political parties, and by the way, there's a kind of left-wing approach, there's a right-wing approach to solving this, but until political parties know that this country needs change, serious change, and now that we are going to continue to see government after government come in and just implode instantaneously, because this country is crying out for big changes.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's interesting. The Mail did a sort of interactive thing yesterday where you could put your postcode in, or the postcode of your local high street. So the postcode of my local high street looks very bad. Shoplifting, bag thefts, funnily enough, including me. My suspect was back in court on Thursday, except he didn't turn up. I mean, had a little bit of a laugh with the copper who called, with the victim support who called to tell me about it. I mean, they didn't tell me in advance which day he'd be, and they told it'd be August, and it just didn't turn up. So now there's a warrant out for his arrest. I mean, it's just genuinely June the 1st last year, and here we are.
But Julia, like, it's not just galling, it's not just despicable and frustrating that we have to tolerate this crime, but the sheer lack of interest in those offences compared to the fact that week after week people in this country open a newspaper and they see a scene of half a dozen police officers coming in hot-footed to arrest someone over a tweet or over a sign in a shop. A sign in a shop that says that shoplifters are scumbags. So the police
Well, again, one of my
them.
local shops, they've got photographs, CCTV photographs of the people who've been stealing, of them stealing, and they've got them in the window to say not welcome in this store. Well, that is apparently against your GDPR or whatever. But again, I don't care.
Topsy-turvy,
Well, I want to take photographs of all and it's largely young men, to be fair, in my local tube station, who go through the barriers and don't pay. I'd like to let's have two people videoing. Right, I've got you going through, not paying, got a photo. Let's just put them up on posters. I would be the one who was arrested. That is what I find extraordinary. Whereas we need to. I've been talking about this a lot lately. We need to bring back shame. Yeah. We need to bring back shaming people. It's really, really important. Personally, I'd be bringing back stocks and rotten tomatoes. That would work for me. But listen, there's this interactive thing, top crimes in your area, and it's action taken, unsolved, and other. Genuinely, unsolved is basically it's in my local area. 96.4% of crimes went unsolved. Most of them were vehicle crime, burglary, bicycle theft. There's some violence and sexual offences. And it's just, you just think that you're literally not bothering. At that point, you're literally not bothering. And I think people realise that. Look, we've just seen in 7 months under Labour, we've seen 26,000 prisoners released early, hundreds who've been jailed for more than 10 years released early. Now, we know those people, when they're put in prison, you're sentenced to 10 years, you're never going to serve 10 years. It used to be you might serve 7.5 or 8. Now now it's 40%, so you serve 4 years, but then you're let out early on licence, and then you're let out even earlier than that. You're basically serving, realistically, a quarter to a third of your sentence behind bars. Yep. We have a nonsense, and we've got overcrowded prisons. Imagine how many people should be behind bars for all those years. Again, and you wonder why crime is going up, even though, of course, the crime stats say, of course, they're not. So the rest of us who say it's going up, and the people who perception of that it's going up in their area because the number of people they know who've been mugged or had stuff stolen or attempted break-ins, we're just all making it up. Yeah, it's a figment of our imagination.
Can I tell you what, Julia? There is nothing that makes my blood boil more than privileged London commentators, politicians, and all all of the rest of it, writing in newspapers week in, week out that crime has never been lower, this is all good, that the supposed gold standard survey of crime says it's going down. Yet, everybody I know has taken steps to avoid crime in recent weeks, in recent years. Everybody knows that it's going on more, and the police themselves are recording crime in record rates. Yet we are told, for reasons that are beyond our understanding, that are never spelled out, that this gold standard survey says it's going down. Baloney. Utter hogswash.
Completely.
It is nonsense. It is getting pushed week in, absolutely incessantly, by a bunch of people that wouldn't know a crime if it struck them in the face. They live in neighbourhoods where they're totally safe. It is so beyond aggravating.
I don't think there is a safe neighbourhood anymore. I just find, but I really object to people being told don't have your mobile phone out, don't have a nice watch, don't have anything like that because someone will rob it from you. No, to make sure those people aren't on the streets, maybe putting them behind bars. Deport them afterwards, I would suggest. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. And so many other, there's so many other stories I want to get to, but let's talk about talking about police actually did turn up at the weekend. Palestine Action protest was organised in Parliament Square. It was the usual suspects. There wasn't a retired vicar, librarian, university lecturer or teacher who was available to do anything else on Sunday, so it was Saturday at the weekend. They were at the Palestine Action protest holding up a sign saying, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action." 522 arrests were made. Metropolitan Police, well done. Now, you can oppose genocide. You should oppose genocide in the countries where it's happening. You absolutely should. You should oppose the Hamas genocidal lunatics who would like to kill every single Israeli and Jew. Oh, by the way, all of you in Parliament Square as well, if they got their chances. You should absolutely oppose that. But you can support the Palestinian people. You can oppose military action in Gaza by Israel if you want. Best if you call it the right word, though. Military action, war, rather than genocide. Made up nonsense. But if you support Palestine Action, and there were big signs from the police telling you, that is illegal. Why is it illegal? Because it's a proscribed terrorist group. Because they are not an organisation that is peacefully calling for the rights of Palestinian people or a Palestinian state. They are a violent, criminal organisation that has used terror tactics, including specifically against Jewish-owned businesses in this country, to further their cause. And when you support Palestine Action, you are committing a criminal offence, which you all knew when you did it. And I don't give two hoots whether you're in your 60s or whether you're retired or whether you're blind or in a wheelchair, as one of the activists was, whether you look a little bit pathetic with your grey hair as you're being carted off by a big burly policeman. You knew you were breaking the law. You thought you were just such a virtuous soul by doing so. You got what you wanted. You knew the deal and you got your criminal record. Well, you got your arrest. The question is now, will you all be prosecuted? Because guess who gets to decide that? Lord Hermer, the man who decided that, yes, Lucy Connolly should be prosecuted for a deleted tweet in relation to the Southport riots. A nasty, horrible tweet. I was disgusted that she wrote it. Well, so was she, because she deleted it even before police even turned up at her door. But he's a man who thinks that that tweet was totally unacceptable. I would think 522 people claiming they support a prescribed terrorist group in public, they would definitely be as much of a danger to society as Lucy Connolly, would they not be, Sam? Shouldn't the police, shouldn't the courts, shouldn't Lord Hermer want to send a message to people who support terrorists? I think he should he not?
Well, I think we all know that this is not going to end in the same way. It's almost as if we have two tiers of justice.
No, I've never heard that phrase before.
However, I am going to push back a little bit because I am a free speech purist and I do always protect the rights of free speech of people where I possibly can. I do think that this law, that expressing support for this organisation is probably going to break down and it's just not going to work. We cannot jail them all. That's the reality.
What about people saying I support Hamas?
Well,
there's an issue about whether or not this group should have been prescribed as a terrorist group.
So my view is I think it should have been banned as a terrorist group. group. People shouldn't have been able to run it, fund it, organise it, be a member of it. But for groups that are not committing violence against and causing serious injury or killing people, there is probably not the widespread public support necessary for such an extreme curtailing of free speech rights.
So you should be allowed to say you support this particular terrorist group. It's either a terrorist group or it's not.
That's the view I've come to. That's the view I've come to because, look, at the end of the day, none of these 522 people that turned up yesterday did anything other than cause the usual nuisance.
You're making martyrs of librarians.
You're making martyrs of librarians. You're probably the result of yesterday's is probably. The police arresting all these people has probably increased support for this organisation nationally. It has probably backfired.
These people, I bet you anything, every single one of these people would have happily seen, if Brexit protesters, pro-Brexit people arrested, they would happily have seen, when we went on anti-lockdown march, happily have seen them arrested. They would happily see an awful lot of other people. They would probably support someone like Kelly J. Keane talking about, how, trans women are not women because they're not, they're men. They would happily see those people arrested because they're not nice people. I bet all these people, when comedians and people who are people who've said nothing remotely aggressive or threatening about other issues that they don't care about, I bet they would be going, well, serves you right. There are consequences to your actions, they would say. They'd be happily cheering those people being arrested and convicted.
Absolutely
But
would.
now they care about freedom of speech.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you why, because they're hypocrites. But I'm not
You're
prepared to be. I'm going to defend people that I dislike, that I think are reprehensible, that I think are idiotic. In the case of Mozambique, who happened just about to accidentally, inadvertently walk into just about every terrorist war zone in the 1990s,
Such an easy mistake to make.
Such an easy mistake to make. It was totally unfair that he ended up at Guantanamo Bay. I would defend their right to free speech because I am going to hold myself to a higher standard than them, and we should never forget that we are on the right side in this. They are on the wrong side. And
I think we should have perhaps surrounded them at Parliament Square with pictures of those emaciated hostages.
Right. But you wouldn't have been able to do that because the police would have arrested you for going and upsetting the protesters.
Unless they wanted to bust me in if I was, for instance,
You're the wrong side for that, I'm afraid, Julia. The wrong side for the bus service.
Difficult to keep up, isn't it? I need to go to a break, but I do want to just also mention, not needing a bus service, but being a driver. Government looking at changing the law in terms of two aspects in particular of driving. Now, you're already saying about this. I approve of this. I've got to say, drivers over 70 being required to take eye tests every few years, or being faced with a ban. I'm very happy with that one. Yeah, I mean, I know quite a few people in their older age. Not that I'm a particularly good driver in my 50s, but, but also reducing the drink drive limit from where we are in England to Scotland, and actually to France and other countries. I think France, it's just 0. It's not unusual that, but also things like fines, penalty points if you are a driver and your passenger doesn't have a seatbelt on. You're in charge of the vehicle, you should be in charge of the passenger. I'm kind of in favour of all of this.
Julia, if I might, this is one of these areas where it's just a divide between people who live in a city like London.
I barely drive.
And people who live in the countryside.
We just demand the right to be half blind and to drive drunk without the seatbelts on.
No, Julia, come on, right.
That's a silly call to action.
35 milligrams per 100 ml of blood, which is what the current limit is, equates to 1.5 to 2 pints at a pub.
For a man, it's less. It's one for a woman.
Everywhere in the countryside, people go to a village pub of an evening.
That's why you see awful head-on collisions that kill people on country roads.
OK, right, Julia, this is just balderdash, right? In Scotland, where they have the lower limit of 22 milligrams per 100 millilitres, road casualties after drink driving are higher and are the only place in Great Britain to have gone up. There is absolutely zilch evidence. In fact, the only evidence there is says that this will make the situation worse and not better.
I'm of the view you shouldn't have a drink at all before driving.
What you will do is you will kill off every single last village pub that has survived the rising energy prices, that survived the national insurance rises, that has survived the fact that you've made the pub responsible if the staff objects to a joke a customer is told. Village pubs up and down this country will shut routinely. I live in a very rural part of
and we all drink
Essex. Everybody goes to, there's a tiny little village pub. It serves 2 beers. You can only pay in cash. You can have a ham sandwich or a cheese sandwich.
I like it already.
The beer is weak. Everybody family goes, of an evening, it opens from 6 till 8. They go and have a couple of pints, 1 pint for some, 2 pints for some, weak beer. They drive home. For farmers, for people in the rural community,
I get that.
That is all they've got. There is no evidence, zero evidence that there is this massive amount of people
that's true. Well, we're going to talk to Edmund King. The argument is being like we saw deaths on the roads fall, and they haven't fallen in the last 10 years. My thing is, but we've got like 10 million more people in the country, and we haven't seen more road deaths. I would say that's amazing, especially as I am very aware, certainly in London, the huge number of drivers on the roads who definitely did not pass a British driving test, put it that way. But look, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, particularly if I think this is very much more an issue. You know, I can get an Uber anywhere. I wouldn't dream of taking the car out if we were planning to have a drink. But if in rural areas, that's not an option. I get that. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly if you've got older parents or you are older yourself, about those eye tests. I want to hear from you more particularly, though, about prisoners being freed early, the foreign prisoners for certain countries, but not the ones where we're getting most criminality from, it would seem, being deported, may not even serve a day behind bars in their own country. How would you feel about that? Is that the solution to the problem? And do you think any of it will ever happen? You can call me about Palestine action and those arrests. You name it, you're in charge about what you want to call about. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll take your calls up next. This is Talk.
Oxford Street, which is the prime kind of shopping destination for London, huge attraction for tourists and Londoners alike, and yet here we go, private business having to warn people that actually it's not safe to have your phone out while you're walking along there shopping, whatever you're doing. Crime everywhere is a big problem, we know that, but in London in particular we have the consequences of some very clear political choices by this mayor, and that's what's making it worse. He says that keeping Londoners safe is his #1 priority, but his budget simply doesn't follow that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:29 is the time. I'm going to get your calls up right now, asking about lots of different topics, but it's interesting. First two calls are up on the board about Palestine action. Stephen is in Southampton. He's given us a buzz on 0344 499 1000. Stephen, what do you make of all those arrests? 522 bang to rights or not?
It's not that. The word genocide gets on my nerves. If you take Central Africa, and it's a conservative estimate that 500 babies, little black babies and black children, die every single solitary day for the sake of a glass of water. Now, if you go back to the year 2000, which is 25 years, that equates to 4.5 million little babies and children have died for the sake of a glass of water. That is a genocide.
OK, well, and again, it's not. It's not, because genocide, we have words that have clear definitions, and it has to be the deliberate act of trying to wipe out, to kill or substantially, kill large numbers or all of a particularly ethnic or religious or heritage group. I mean, I don't know why we have deaths, and we will always have deaths, but most of these kids aren't dying because of a lack of water. They're dying because of civil war and corrupt, useless governments that don't actually run their countries properly. That's the main thing. Did you have a view on Palestine action? Because that's what I thought you were talking about.
No.
OK, fair enough, Stephen. Thank you for that. But I agree with you. The overuse of the word genocide, I was with friends at the weekend who don't do politics very much, but were talking to me about Israeli genocide, and I actually had to say, I can't do this. We're going to fall out. You only watch the BBC, you don't know any better. Let's end the conversation now, because otherwise I knew that there would end up being people walking out and it wasn't worth it. But it's a deep sigh time. Thank you very much, Stephen. James is on the line. He's in London. Hello, James. What do you want to talk about?
Hiya, Julia. I'm as much exhausted as yourself over this subject. And we got this government now, so Mr. Starmer and Yvette Cooper, if we haven't got a two-tier police system and justice system in the United Kingdom, why aren't those 514 idiots, which were pre-warned what would happen to them, now in court? Why isn't Westminster Court now open for a special court session? Yeah. Because what's all right for everybody in July last year is certainly okay for these individuals, and we need to put them in jail because it is a prescribed terrorist.
And we need to send a message, don't we? A short, sharp shock, send a message to the rest of the nation.
Absolutely right. If they want to have their vegan tea, they can have it in prison now with a criminal record, because basically what they did is supporting a terrorist organisation.
And yet you and I both know, James, that some sort of granny librarian or Open University academic is not a threat to the nation in the same way as someone who is throwing a brick at police or threatening to set fire to an asylum hotel last summer. They're not. I don't want them in prison, because that's a nonsense. I also don't want Lucy Connolly in prison. But I mean, we don't actually want these people to go to prison. We don't have the space, and B, we've got better people to put in there.
No, I want their time to be wasted. I want them to go through the court like everybody did the last July. Because I am sick and tired of this nonsense with these people. They come out with these plaques. They mean nothing. Yeah. The police warned them beforehand what would happen to them, and they still went along because these middle-class idiots are nothing more than useful idiots to the Islamists in this country and around the world.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Need more politicians to say it like it is, like that, James. Yeah, I want them to be convicted. I want them to have criminal records. I think Sam doesn't, but I don't want them to spend a single day behind bars. I'm pretty sure that some of the people who organised some of the marches on Saturdays probably should spend a day behind bars, but there we are. 10:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to be talking to your favourite of mine, political commentator James Matthewson, about a lot of the big stories in the news. This is Talk. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, good morning. This is Talk 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong's still with me. Let's go to our first guest of this hour, James Matthewson, a political commentator who joins us on this sunny, sweltering Monday morning. Very good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia. I don't know where the sun is for me, unfortunately. It's not nowhere to be seen.
Where are you?
I'm in Edinburgh, so the sun's
there you
never
are.
seen.
That's Scotland.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done the Edinburgh Festival many a time, and it basically just rains. It's as simple as that. But what can you do?
It certainly does.
Good, miserable grey morning to our Scottish cousins. What can I say? Let's get straight to it. Labour have freed, we now know, 26,000 prisoners early, trying to free up prison spaces. Admittedly, a problem. They were left by the Conservatives after 14 years in power, no question about that. But some of those include people who were sentenced to 10 years plus who've been out on the streets early. Yeah, they'd be out on the streets at some point, but out on the street early. But they also now want to deport foreign criminals before they even go to prison in the first place. For certain countries, only a limited number of countries, but they could be deported. But they may never serve a minute behind bars in the country of origin. What do you make about those two policies?
Really difficult one, isn't it? I think the situation that faces... Yeah, I think the challenge that faces the prisoner state as a whole is systematic. And for me, you look at one aspect of it, you look at another, it needs complete reform. And many people have said the same for a long time.
Can we just put up some prisons very quickly? So just particularly for the people who are low risk, and literally we just put up some prison camps, nice and quick. There you go, put them in there.
I mean, the thing is to try and, make sure that people are even rehabilitated properly to even...
We ain't doing that anymore.
Prison. It doesn't even happen, does it?
Nope.
It doesn't work for people. People going to prison for most crimes doesn't even benefit society as a whole. The whole point of prison is to remove people from society, from the rest of us, who are dangerous.
Yep.
The majority of people in there are not of that caliber, I'm afraid. The majority of people in prison or who've served in prison in and out consecutively have learning difficulties, and it's one of these things that hasn't been addressed for years and years and years. Now the prison population's overflown. The government wants to do something quick about it. I don't envy them. I don't know what the quick fixes are myself.
I don't think they've got learning difficulties, but an awful lot of people have got, basically they've had rotten childhoods, they've been failed by their parents, failed by society, failed by schools, failed by the whole system, and we could have perhaps got to a lot of them much earlier and prevented these awful lives. But at the point where they are who they are, yeah, I'd rather they were behind bars.
I mean, not everyone though, is it, Julia? It depends on the crime they've committed.
Yeah.
I just don't. If you take something like drug offences, I am sick to death of seeing people in prison for drug offences in this country. Do you know how much money we could be making?
It depends what kind of drug offence. You go to prison if you're dealing drugs. You don't go to prison if you're caught with a wacky backy ciggy.
No, that's not the case. I mean,
you really don't go to prison for that.
They've still tried with heroin addicts, with A-class offenders, people who are called Karen, people who are involved in that and the paraphernalia of drugs, unfortunately are still demonised and still criminalised.
They're usually behind bars because of all the crimes they've committed to fund their habit.
That are linked to their drug use, exactly. But this is the whole problem, is that the war on drugs, kind of started under the Tony Blair era, just hasn't worked. And I think areas like that are the places where you could make real cost savings.
Well, unfortunately, the rehabilitation rate, even in places like the Priory, when they're paying an absolute fortune, are very, very, very low. And if someone is going to be a heroin addict or any other kind of addict, and they haven't got the money to fund that habit while they're paying criminals, then they are going to be stealing. And I'd rather those people were behind bars and not my problem.
No, I'm afraid I disagree with you.
You want them to be my problem?
Won't be the first thing we disagree about.
We have heroin addicts like sleeping rough on the streets near me, sleeping in doorways, and they're actually taking their drugs in public. There are 4 primary schools like within 50 yards.
These things can be addressed. I mean, there's been great schemes.
Yeah, get them off the streets.
Been hugely successful with the likes of fixed rooms, rooms where these people can go to, places where they can go and take drugs safely.
And how are they paying for those drugs?
And you can minimise.
How are they paying for those drugs? They're stealing.
Because the knock-on effect on the NHS is cost-wise.
How are they paying for those drugs? They're stealing.
Well, the knock-on effect of this is anyway that there's a cost on the NHS. I'm not saying provide people free heroin. I'm just saying.
So they're stealing it then.
Spaces.
So exactly. So they're stealing it.
Where the paraphernalia can be provided for free. Look, crimes happen, criminal activity happens. The most part because of poverty, as we know. So
Well, do you know what? A bit of an insult, actually, to people who've grown up in poverty who don't commit crime. Actually, the vast majority of people who grow up, they don't commit crime, actually. It's quite an insult. Let's look. I want to talk about something else because time is tight. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, wrote in the Mail on Sunday yesterday that he is personally, worried for the safety of his own 3 daughters because of the Channel migrants and the level of criminality we've been seeing and the number of sexual assaults and alleged rapes and like that we've seen, which have been alleged to be committed, some actually convictions from people who have been living in those asylum hotels. Is that a justified concern for a dad?
Robert Jenrick is someone who is now consistently using the language of those people in Reform UK. He's looked to America.
How outrageous.
Donald Trump. Well, I mean, come on, the Tories were in power for, the past 14 years before Labour. He's acting like he was never part of any of those previous governments. The man is now coming out with this language to sound strong in an attempt to, now that he's had his Ozempic and he's slimmed down, he's got himself in a leadership position he feels comfortable with. He wants to now move in on Kemi Badenoch's very weak leadership of the Conservative Party, and he hopes to try and kill off that reform threat by echoing them entirely.
Okay, those are his tactics, yeah. But is it fair? Are you saying he's a dad of 3 daughters and he's not worried and he's lying, or is he worried and it's justified?
He should be very worried, as anybody should be, who cares about women, because we have seen the threat of violence against women and girls increase around the globe. For me, it's nothing. I don't think
we have, actually. I don't think that is true. I think we have seen a specific rise in the threat to women, particularly from particularly men arriving in this country who have, as he described, a medieval attitude towards women.
Yeah, I know plenty of people in the Conservative Party who have medieval attitude towards women, Julia. It's nothing new. Misogyny is not new.
Well, thinking that you can just grab a woman in the street and rape her, or grab a 12-year-old. Do you think that's a normal attitude in the... No, seriously. Do you think that's a normal, typical attitude in the Tory party, or indeed any political party in this country?
I don't think it's a normal attitude across the board, by the way. That's not how most of these crimes are committed.
No,
and it
is a very normal attitude of men who've arrived from certain countries.
I'm sorry, it absolutely is not. To believe
Have you done much travelling, James?
Statistically, I'm sorry, it's always anecdotal, isn't it, Julie?
Because it's not anecdotal. The stats are very, very clear about the rates of sexual assault and rape, arrests and convictions of people from certain foreign countries.
If you're talking about percentages, then we can talk percentages. 25% of the Reform UK MPs have a criminal conviction for beating women.
Oh, for goodness! He's not a Reform MP anymore, to be fair, James McMurdoch.
That's a statistic.
But we're talking about per capita in terms of over-representation, in terms of the number of people in this country.
Well, there isn't an over-representation of asylum seekers and sexual assault cases. There simply isn't.
There is no representation from people of certain nationalities in our prisons who are convicted.
But this is what you deem to be certain nationalities. What you're talking about.
What do we deem to be? I mean, that's not a complicated. For instance, Albanians. Albanians are overrepresented.
What's an Albanian?
What on earth does that mean? What do you class
as an Albanian?
Someone who is an Albanian national.
Right, and they're here, claiming asylum, or
I'm talking about... You're the one who keeps going on about asylum seekers. I'm talking about migrants to this country. We have a massive overrepresentation, for instance, of men from Pakistan, a particular area in Pakistan, in the grooming gangs. In terms of per capita, number of Pakistani men in area where these crimes are taking place, massively overrepresented. There is a particular issue with men coming from countries where they have a very, as I agree with Robert Jenrick, medieval attitude towards women and girls in terms of their rights and how they should dress and how they should behave and what they are for, which leads to a growing problem. I talk to the young women in my office and what they are dealing with on the streets routinely in London, and it is definitely something they have seen an increase in, and it is largely from men who are speaking with foreign accents. Nothing to do with the colour of their skin. Sorry, I know that's too anecdotal for you, but they're probably all lying, aren't they?
It is too anecdotal. They're not lying, no. But I believe there is an absolute crisis of misogyny taking place because we are seeing it rampant across the board. We're seeing it with kids in schools. We're seeing it online with people like
probably all Andrew Tate's fault, isn't it? Yeah.
Not all Andrew Tate's fault. He's a symptom of a wider problem.
Exactly.
Listen, he's somebody who's cashing in on it. That's what he's doing.
That's true.
But at the end of the day, people like Donald Trump, people in positions of power who themselves are sex offenders.
Oh, yes. I completely accept that. I completely accept that.
If you've got them people running the world, what do you expect the world to look like?
Well, again... I'm not entirely sure we're talking about the same level, but there we are. Palestine action. Should those 522 people have been arrested on Saturday?
It's a difficult one. They should be, I understand that they've been arrested because they've shown support for a prescribed organisation. You won't see me out there saying saying those words and holding up a sign because I know I'm going to be arrested for doing so. But I understand their point because being arrested has long been historically a form of protest.
Well, then why are they moaning about being arrested? They got what they wanted.
When you believe that those laws are incorrect, as they will be, because there will be a challenge in the court. The government is wrong on this, and it should not be wasting the taxpayers' money.
So the security agencies that believe that they are a terrorist group, they're wrong too, yeah? They're definitely wrong. And those pensioners and retired librarians and vicars, they know more about it than the security agencies.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And I'm sorry, when it comes to it, you've got groups like Britain First wandering the street and not being prescribed, calling for migrant hotels to be burnt down on the ground. If they've done that, they should be charged with a crime. 100% they should be charged. I believe they probably have been, the people who have done so. Yeah, but they've not been prescribed, have they? The Labour government haven't prescribed.
I think there's a specific thing, isn't it, regarding particular terror, whether an organisation is a terrorist group.
Yeah, but it was only this event breaking into an RAF base, which again they used every ability they could. They were just looking for an excuse to try and prescribe them. It's trying to, it's trying to bow down to Israel and show them.
Well, seriously, you think this government has got a history of bowing down to Israel?
I think there's a huge. Listen, I've been in the Labour Party. I know the problems in the Labour Party with how much power the Israeli lobby has on it. It's unfortunately
it's the Jews, not the
Jews at all.
Not the Jews.
Every single Jew I know is out there protesting against the starvation and the murder of the Palestinian people.
It's not murder, is it? It's war. It's not murder. Were we murdering Germans in the Second World War? Were we murdering Germans in the Second World War, or were we killing people on the enemy?
He's going to clean Gaza out completely now. You watch it. You'll have those people round up in the camps, moved out the area, and if they refuse to get out the way, they'll be killed as they have.
I mean, apparently they've been claiming they've been living in an open-air prison all this time. You'd think they'd be happy to go. I'm sure that their Arab neighbours that care so much about them will be thrilled to have them.
If you create an inhospitable environment for people and then say, oh, by the way, you should probably leave because it's inhospitable, that is ethnic cleansing, it's murder.
I hate to tell you, Hamas created an inhospitable environment for people in Gaza.
Every single authority of any credibility on the world stage has criticised this and called it for what it is, and that's a genocide.
It's a genocide, except there isn't mass killing of Palestinian people,
yes, there is.
If Israel wanted to wipe out the people of Gaza, Israel could have done it on October the 8th.
It's doing it right now in front of us.
They're doing it right now, are they? You need to stop watching so much on the BBC, mate.
Okay, well,
no, you really do.
I'll swap up the BBC for Talk TV instead. Then
I can assure you get more accurate news on this station. I can absolutely assure you do. We're going to have to leave it there. Time is against us. 10:49. Always good to get you on the show, James Mathewson. Thank you for that. 10:49. We're going to go to a break. Up next to talk more about prisons with a researcher and writer on prisons and former prisoner David Shipley. This is Talk.
Oxford Street, which is the prime kind of shopping destination for London, huge attraction for tourists and Londoners alike, and yet here we go, private business having to warn people that actually it's not safe to have your phone out while you're walking along there shopping, whatever you're doing. Crime everywhere is a big problem, we know that, but in London in particular we have the consequences of some very clear political choices by this mayor, and that's what's making it worse. He says that keeping Londoners safe is his #1 priority, but his budget simply doesn't follow that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:51 is the time. Delighted to welcome to the studio now writer and researcher on prisons and justice issues, also former prisoner himself, gives him insight on all sides of debate, David Shipley. A very good morning to you.
Hi.
Great to get you in the studio at long last. Lots of stories regarding prisoners in the news today. First of all, Labour freeing 26,000 prisoners early in just 7 months of being in office. Hundreds were jailed who, for more than 10 years, were released early. Now, you're going to prison for 10 years. You've committed a very serious crime indeed. Is this significant? Because we know no one serves their full sentence pretty much anymore, and you get let out earlier and earlier and earlier. Are we, and is the media, are we in danger just making a big sort of, big circus out of people coming out of prison a couple of months early when they're going to be out anyway?
I think it is important because, we had this early release scheme announced, which we did need to have because there was no room in the prisons. And I think people maybe didn't realise how many prisoners were going to be released how early. And
how serious a lot of their crimes were.
Sure, and for these sorts of sentences, you might have people who have committed very large-scale drug importation, for example. This could be people bringing in kilos or tons of Class A drugs into the country. And I do think the problem we have is that the system itself is full and broken. We have to do something, but this has just moved a lot of the problem.
Yeah.
We know probation are really struggling. The probation service are currently balloting for strike action, and this isn't
That'll help.
Well, it's not really getting attention, but they're rightly saying we haven't had a pay rise in 10 years, and now you're about to give us loads more work because you're using prison less.
Yeah.
We're going to use
and we're
probation
supposed to be monitoring these people. And of course the public are told, but these people are closely monitored. They're not.
They're not. And I and other journalists have been looking at this over the last year. The tagging system has been in disarray. People not getting tagged, which is supposed to be its main mechanism of supervising them.
So we know where you are.
Yeah, well, exactly. We know what you're doing, and that just hasn't been happening consistently.
But that's really basic. I mean, if you're out of prison on early release, you should be tagged. That's seems to me to be pretty...
Yes, it should be.
How does it not happen? Don't you put the tag on as they leave prison?
You would think that, but no, instead, because we've outsourced...
This is so terrifying.
Yeah, well, we outsourced the tagging systems. It's run by an outsourced company at the moment.
Who are paid billions of pounds.
Who are paid billions of pounds, of course.
Yep.
And what happens is you're released from prison, you have to then make your way to your probation office. Now, you might think at the probation office you could be tagged, but that would be far too simple. So instead, you then go home and the tagging company is supposed to come round and put a tag on you. And that's supposed to happen the day you're released from prison.
But a lot of people don't have a home when they're released.
Indeed, and even then often it hasn't been happening. So you have this really chaotic system where it's just not in control.
And these people, again, these people are out on the streets. What do you make of the idea that they're saying that foreign criminals could be deported, unless you're a murderer or a terrorist, but you could commit GBH, you could leave someone paralysed, you could rape somebody, but you're a foreign criminal, you could be deported as soon as you are convicted and sentenced. And if it's a prison sentence, you can be deported straight away. You won't be able to appeal until you're aboard. Now, this is only for 23 countries. There's already a few countries this is already allowed in. But they include Finland, Australia and Canada. And I know we've got a huge crime wave from Finns and Canadians and
so many
Australians.
Finns. And no Afghanistan or Eritrea on there.
Yeah, and again, if you look at, for instance, like the boat people, Afghanistan, Iran, Eritrea, Syria and Sudan, none of those countries are on the list. So you look at, there are a few others that are on the list, like Albania, which do have a high prison population from, but there's no guarantee these people actually will serve a single day behind bars in their home country. Yeah,
and I think that's quite dangerous. So I do think we shouldn't have so many foreign nationals in our prisons, right? And we should try to deport them quickly. But if we create a system where you commit a crime here and you immediately get sent home, what we've actually created is a come and do crime for free setup. And if we should assume then organised crime will use that to get people to come and do crime here.
And then you get dispatched home and then they just ship you back in.
Well, we've got no border control, right? So of course they can do. So I think it's...
I think we might have spotted the flaw in this system.
A little
and
bit,
there's no incentive for these countries, say Albania. Oh, great, we're going to spend a fortune putting one of our nationals behind bars for a crime he committed somewhere else.
And I know of foreign national prisoners at Wandsworth who actually would try to advocate with governors that they be deported quickly, knowing that they would get released far quicker at home, they would be treated differently. So, yeah, it's very tempting to say, let's just send them all home the moment.
Because the argument given by the minister today, who's doing the rounds, was very much like, well, what about rapists? What about someone who's raped and then their rapist gets convicted of, say, in 4 years prison sentence? I mean, rapist convicted. I know, I'm stretching reality, folks, for effect. And then they basically get deported, and then they don't serve a single day behind bars. I mean, I'm more than happy for my taxes to go to the 54 grand to pay for them to be behind bars for a few years. That's money well spent, in my view. But the reality is, I mean, most people aren't being arrested for crimes anyway. So does it make, I mean, to a certain extent, does any of it make any difference when barely anyone ever gets arrested or charged or convicted?
Well, I think the one bit which does sound interesting is the idea we'll deport them and let them appeal after they've been deported, because the big problem we have is, of course, everyone uses human rights law, often the right to a family life, to resist being deported.
But it's only 23 countries.
It is. So if this was expanded to all countries, and it could be countries like Afghanistan, Germany are managing to deport Afghans at the moment, so I'm not sure why we can't.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
But in terms of, what will this make much of a difference? I think it will free up a bit of space. I think it obviously gives some good headlines, and I think the intent is solid, but it needs to be much more widespread, and we need to be looking at deporting to the countries where we get far more criminal people coming from, like the Afghanistans and Eritreas.
Yeah, but we're simply not going to get those deals, though, are we?
Probably not, no.
No, I mean, I got the realistically. Still with us is Sam Armstrong. What do you make of this? Well, I mean, no, that's it. That's all we need. That sound sums it up.
Well, I really worry about that. This is tantamount to a charter, a licensing for the grooming gangs, because you can now come into this country, participate in the organised sexual exploitation of young working class white girls. You can, if you are ever caught, which we know the vast majority are not, you will simply just go back home to where you came from.
Where you're probably already building a house, as we saw with one convicted grooming ganger who said, I can't be deported, it's not safe. But he's actually building a house at home that he goes on holiday to.
Are we really now saying that foreigners, when they commit crimes, that they ought not to spend a single day in prison? Because that's the
But the argument from the minister, as I said again, she was asked this 2 or 3 times on media this morning, and she kept saying, but you're not going to have to pay the cost. But again, I think
why don't we let all prisoners out?
On that basis,
why don't we let them all out? It'll be much cheaper.
I think we virtually are, as far as I can gather. But David Shipley, I mean, there is a huge cost of keeping people behind bars, but we're not doing a lot of the things we're supposed to do with prisoners behind bars. We're not rehabilitating anybody, we're not educating anyone, we're not getting anyone off drugs. We're doing the exact opposite.
I think this is it, and I am often more concerned about what happens in prison versus how long we put people there. Yeah, and I think £54,000 a year to pay for people to sit in their cells for 22 hours a day, staring at daytime TV, often getting addicted to drugs, often drinking moonshine, whatever it might be, is just destructive.
It's not good value for money, is it?
It's a waste of our money and of our time, but also of their time. It's not actually making them less likely to commit crime.
No, in fact, they're far more likely to commit crimes after once you're a drug addict and you have to pay for those drugs. Absolutely fascinating. Great to have you on. I hope you'll come back into the studio again very soon. Lots more coming up. More, of course, from Sam Armstrong. Let's get more of your calls as well on all the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Keep those calls coming in, particularly about foreign criminals, Palestine action. You name it, you call in about it, you're on air. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning once again. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's a pleasure to have your company. Don't forget, by the way, if you've missed anything on the show, do go to my YouTube page. We've got the Talk YouTube page, but also the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. We called it that, so you can find it easily on YouTube. Hit subscribe, and then you will never miss a thing. You may have missed the Bonnie Blue interview last Thursday, which half the nation seems to be apoplectic about, including some rival broadcasters who think apparently they should tell me who I should interview. Very, very bizarre. What's really interesting about all the people who criticised my choice of interview were people who quite clearly, quite blatantly, had not actually bothered to watch or listen to the interview, and therefore, funnily enough, had not a clue what they were talking about. So if you want to have an opinion on an interview, I'm just going to go out on a limb in an old-fashioned sort of way and say maybe you should listen to it or watch it first. Just maybe the thing you're criticising me for is exact opposite of what actually happened. But there we are. Your thoughts, though, always welcome. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. In particular, your thoughts on the foreign prisoners who are criminals who are set to be deported straight after they are given a prison sentence but may not serve a single day behind bars at home or abroad. Plus, the Metropolitan Police say they faced entirely unrealistic challenges in policing a protest at the weekend in support of Palestine action, in which 532 criminals, alleged criminals, people, including over 80-year-olds, were arrested. Activists were detained on suspicion of terror offences, but later bailed on the spot. Seems to me if you're able to arrest 522 people or 532, whoever it is, well, that's fine. So there wasn't a problem with policing, was there, the Met Police? Apart from the fact that, of course, we had no one policing most of our streets while we had all the other criminals going around. But also going to talk about the Chagos Islands deal. Keir Starmer's deal is going to cost a whopping £35 billion. That is 10 times more than the £3.4 billion that the Prime Minister had previously claimed. Plus, Britain, alongside allies such as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, France and Germany, have criticised Israel's decision to launch a new large-scale military operation in Gaza. They've warned it will aggravate the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the territory. I would have thought that Israel's government's decision was about protecting the Israeli people, which is their first duty of care, rather than worrying about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which in my view is entirely down to Hamas. If you want to have concern for people in Gaza, the very, very simple message is to Hamas to lay down their weapons and free the hostages, and then everything will be fine. It's entirely within their control. Also, the former First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, has written about her mental torture being investigated by police in her new book, Frankly, which is published on Thursday. We'll talk to a Scottish journalist about what else she has had to say, including about her own sexuality. Well, Sam Armstrong, I would like to say, still joins us. He's a commentator and strong views on many of the topics we are talking about. Let's talk first of all about Palestine action in this hour. I've got 522 as arrests, and I've seen a 532. I mean, either way, heck of a lot of people, largely pensioners, it would appear, were arrested on the weekend. They've mostly been bailed. It was all done quite efficiently. I thought they were bailed, and now it's going to be up to Lord Hermer. The PM's big mate, human rights lawyer, the one who decided that Lucy Connolly absolutely should have been prosecuted for that tweet about Southport. And he's going to decide whether or not they get prosecuted or not. Should they be prosecuted or shouldn't they? And should they have been arrested in the first place?
So I disagree with you here. I probably disagree with a bunch of our audience. I defend people's free speech.
And you are very consistent.
I'm very consistent. And there are times when I hate doing it. And there is nothing I hate more than supporting this lot. I mean, there are people there that I think are total wrong-uns. There are people there that have been on every single protest since 1984, where they were down there with Swampy trying to block roads getting built.
CND, they've got all the fashionable good people causes.
Indeed.
Wrong about everything.
And this is just the latest that they're there, and they were deliberately trying to get arrested. However, the offence that says you cannot express support for an organisation is an extraordinarily broad one. it does have a massive curtailing on free speech. And these people, they genuinely believe, they're wrong, but they genuinely believe that there's a genocide going on and that people are getting butchered
But just
and killed.
because someone genuinely believes something, it's like the people who genuinely believe that the world is going to blow up in a cloud dust or drown because of climate change. Just because you genuinely falsely believe something that's not true doesn't justify you supporting a terrorist organisation.
Well, but here's the thing, Julia. We do not criminalise people who say, for example, it is not a crime to say, for example, oh, good on these guys that go and jump the barriers at the tube station, or good on these guys that are going round and cutting down the ULEZ cameras. That's not a crime. You can do that. Anyone can do that.
You can't encourage someone to do it.
You can't encourage someone to do that, but you can say good on them. So this is an extraordinary restriction on free speech, and it is in circumstances in which these people have a very, as I say, a very, very firmly held view. Now, I don't think... Now, I get that that's an offence with Al-Qaeda or with Hamas, organisations that commit terrorist mass atrocities.
Palestine Action, there's no evidence they have done that.
There is no evidence they've done that. In one case, there was a bit of violence against a security guard, but we are not talking about massive bombing attacks.
In which case, the problem is they shouldn't have been prescribed as a terrorist organisation.
Well, I think it was a lawful decision to prescribe them as a terrorist organisation because of the ways the laws were done. But in my view, there is a problem with this offence that says expressing a support is a crime, because with an organisation like Palestine Action, which meets the UK legal definition of a terrorist organisation, it's just not sustainable, because they're going to keep coming week in, week out. They're going to make a mockery of the law.
But that's the same argument about, well, they don't arrest people like Just Stop Oil. Keep arresting them.
But ultimately, and it comes down to this, in the end, I don't think, as wrong as they are, as much as I disagree with them, I don't think it should be an offence to express support for a group that, yes, is involved in organised criminality. I think it should have been banned as a group, but...
I think that is. I think you're normally very consistent. I think you're very consistent. I think there's an argument to say that it shouldn't have been prescribed as a terrorist organisation because it's not equivalent to Hamas or Hezbollah. Mind you, a lot of these people go out to walk on marches where they're basically under Hamas flags as well. So I've got very little sympathy. You knew you can go along there and say I oppose genocide. Well, great, I oppose genocide. But there isn't genocide happening in Gaza, so you're an idiot for thinking that as well. And again, the BBC and all the other broadcasting organisations that perpetrate that lie should be ashamed of themselves. You know, history will not be kind, is all I'm saying. But they can support the Palestinian people. They can support a Palestinian state. They can do all of that. They can be concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. They can do all of that. And they can do all of that without supporting a prescribed terrorist group. So they're choosing to do that. And they think they're signalling, virtue signalling, and they're showing what wonderful, humane people they are. Well, fine. But you've been told the consequences. Actions have consequences. These people would happily see people who are protesting lockdown, protesting face masks, protesting vaccine mandates. They would have had everyone who was like a freedom fighter in Canada having their bank accounts frozen when they were trying to, the lorry drivers, truck drivers didn't want to do it. These people would happily see, anyone who says that, trans women are not women, and apparently that provoking things, they'd have them banned from university campuses. These people, and I'm sorry, these people would stop Israeli organisations from sponsoring any event or try to close down books. These people, tough. I'm more than happy. I don't want you put behind bars because that's a waste of our money and our time, and I don't want martyrs of you anymore. But you're going to get your little criminal record, and you can keep coming back.
They've got them already, Julia.
And we're going to keep arresting you because you're breaking the law. You know you're breaking the law. Live with the consequences like you tell everyone else to. These people, they're just the worst kind of people. They are the worst kind of people.
But people say the same about people who go to buffer zones and silently pray outside buffer zones on abortion clinics. They knew the consequences. They're going, and there's plenty of people that think they're the worst people on earth.
Think that standing silently praying outside an abortion clinic should be criminalised. I also think you shouldn't be harassing people outside abortion clinics.
But if someone wants to hold a placard and just stand outside there, I think...
As long as they're not in the buffer zone. I approve of the buffer zones.
I disagree with buffer zones as well. I think people should be... in the end of the day, it's not causing any harm.
No, it is causing harm because women who are going for abortion are largely very, very traumatised by the fact they're having to go for an abortion. And I don't think you should have someone protesting your private legal health treatment.
They have
You can protest outside Parliament every day of the week. You don't get to protest at women making that personal decision.
But that is where, in their
so
view,
you have buffer zones. They can protest at the end of the street.
Why don't we just set up, I don't know, designated protest areas number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
do you know what, though?
and
We
6.
have done that. We've got things like Speaker's Corner, and then people exercising their free speech get attacked, and then the person who attacks them doesn't get arrested. We've seen that. Right, look, let's talk actually in relation to Palestine Action. It's been claimed that 5 Al Jazeera journalists, reporters and cameramen and their driver, have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza City near a hotel. There were a bunch of tents that people were living in. Now, Israel claims they were Hamas terrorists. Certainly, Anas al-Sharif, they report to. Apparently, he's incredibly well known across the Middle East. He was, they say, the head of a Hamas terror cell. We certainly have seen Telegram posts in which he has celebrated October the 7th with great glee while it was happening. 9 hours in, our heroes, when it was already completely known that it was this was a massacre, a mass rape and the like. Now, as always, and again, it's fascinating, BBC, Sky, ITV, all they're reporting about this attack on journalists. I had a reporter on Sky, a long-standing war reporter this morning, talking about how, Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday, he would allow some more foreign journalists in, but they'd have to be embedded. She says, at the moment, though, only Palestinian journalists in Gaza are able to do, the phrase was unfettered war reporting. I'm sorry. These people are happy. There is no unfettered war reporting. There is no image that comes out of Gaza that has not been approved by Hamas. That's why there's barely any reports of any of those uprisings against them. And what is fascinating is how much the images you see, we've discussed it plenty of times before on the show, the images where you see of starving children, one of which, by the way, wasn't even in Gaza, one of the most famous ones, but the 5 images most used of children starving as a result of Israel genocide are actually children who've got other long-standing problems, known by the journalists taking the pictures, known often, they've often got a perfectly healthy-looking mum with them. What a surprise. We've also had Bild, you might be seeing on our screen right now, showing a photograph of a Gaza photographer staging Hamas propaganda. There are plenty more photos they've got in that report in Bild, the German newspaper or magazine, basically staging these pictures. There's other video footage of these photographs, these images being staged, people being told, this is how you stand, this is the angle, you can actually see the video footage of it happening. We are being played on a daily basis. I'm sure there are people who are suffering horribly in Gaza. There will be people who are hungry, who need the help. They definitely need humanitarian aid. They should let more aid in, all of that. However, if it was such a big, genuine issue, you wouldn't have to stage pictures, would you? I mean, again, journalists saying we don't want journalists attacked. We don't want journalists attacked, but journalists who have who've done selfies with, Yahya Sinwar and who have celebrated October the 7th aren't journalists. They are Hamas propagandists, and in this case, one we're told is a Hamas terrorist.
Reporting on war situations is phenomenally hard and incredibly dangerous. War reporters are heroes. I have known reporters who have been killed reporting on, in that case, the Ukraine war. It is phenomenally difficult because it is so dangerous to get in there and so difficult. However, what Hamas have done, what they have learned to do is to exploit that by selecting, appointing, recruiting, developing a network of Hamas individuals who cosplay as journalists. They are there to push out propaganda and to brand it as journalism. Newspapers and organisations that buy those reports that help to fund it are, in my opinion, an insult to journalists, because what they are doing is they are allowing propaganda to be badged up as journalism.
And they don't say, when they do those reports, they don't say this footage has only been made available to us because Hamas has approved it, which is what they should say.
And all you need to know is when one of the Israeli hostages was rescued from a luxury development in northern Gaza, in whose house was she found? Oh yes, a senior Al Jazeera executive. The same organisation that always happened to get out Osama bin Laden's videos. They were always released via Al Jazeera back in the day. People will remember.
Well, that was the biggest Middle Eastern
based in Qatar, just like Hamas.
But again, also when we saw those horrific staged hostage releases, and then you'd see the women having to give speeches or posing, there would be a journalist journalist, a supposed Al Jazeera, they were only Al Jazeera journalists with press written on them, and they would be going, no, do this. They would be directing what was happening as journalists. Sorry, if I'm a journalist covering something political, I'm not telling the politicians or whatever where to stand or what to do. I mean, they were directing things. It's just blatant. And anyone who's just watching mainstream media now is being sold a blatant lie. Genuinely, I am so appalled. I do actually often message journalists I know personally to say, like, but you know that what you've just done is a lie. And these are experienced war reporters, a lot of them, and experienced foreign correspondents, and they are perpetrating this lie. And again, you can be as critical as you want of Israel. You can completely disagree with what Netanyahu's doing. Lots of Israelis also disagree with Netanyahu's policy. Apparently, the IDF leadership disagrees with what Netanyahu wants to do in terms of occupying Gaza. But again, I don't know how he can occupy Gaza. I thought he already occupied Gaza. That's what we were told for the last 20 years, even though Israeli troops weren't anywhere near Gaza. But it is, you can do all that, that's fine. But when you constantly make claims, the Israeli government in reports always claim things. Yeah, Hamas official figures are given as official figures. You don't have to believe anything the Israeli government says, but I think perhaps if you're not going to believe a democratically elected government that is held to account by its own people, I'm pretty sure you definitely shouldn't accept a single thing that Hamas says, ever, at all, on anything.
And there is this argument that, Benjamin Netanyahu is just continuing the war because he needs it in order to stay in power.
Doesn't hurt him doing that, though.
Well, yeah, but hang on, Julia. And the same isn't so for Hamas?
Yeah.
The same isn't so for this organisation that's got rich of ripping off 2 million people by convincing them every day that they're facing this great existential war, and that's why you need to keep us in, never hold elections, never have a choice about whether this fantastic part of the world that could, as Donald Trump say, be a brilliant, for example, luxury resort on the Mediterranean, should instead keep going down this line of terrorist attacks, going and kidnapping and raping people.
Well, that's what's very interesting, isn't it? The Arab states in the last few days, actually basically saying, we Hamas, lay down your weapons.
Oh, because, Julia, they see through them. They see through...
Well, that's why they don't want any of the Palestinians as refugees in their countries.
They know exactly who they're dealing with, and they want them as far away as possible.
They're bad for business.
Never forget, Hamas shares a border with Egypt too. If the Arab world, if the Muslim world was that concerned about what was going on, and these people were living in such dreadful situations, they could get every single one of them out tomorrow.
Or get any bit of aid in they wanted tomorrow.
Any bit of aid in. They know that they are dealing with some of the most dangerous, some of the most despicable, some of the most evil people on the planet that are running Gaza currently, and they want to keep them locked away as far away as possible as they possibly can from their countries.
Yeah, and that's the reality, isn't it? Look, I also just want to talk about small boat migrants. The number of small boat migrants to reach Britain under the Labour government is set to hit 50,000 this year. 435 arrived on Saturday alone. Lovely weather. We've got an amber heat alert. More migrants today. I mean, that's kind of the recipe, isn't it? Also, we found out this weekend ministers have lost track of 150,000 migrants. These aren't small boat migrants, just people who overstayed their visas, just don't know where they are. And then we've also got local councils claiming that whole streets are now being offered for use by migrants. So new housing developments, desperately needed by local people, just basically being handed over, obviously at great extra cost, great extra payments being paid to the government, but usually it's like the Sercos and others who are buying them up on behalf of the Home Office to house migrants. I mean, sorry, this is just not going to work. We've got Kemi Badenoch right now. She's in Epping, where, of course, the Bell Hotel. We've seen those protests against asylum hotels. We've got them, at Britannia. We've got them at the Thistle, as well as the Barbican in London, and across the country. People are saying enough is enough. Ordinary men, women, and children. And the idea is they want to get everyone out of the hotels, but they want to put them in homes. That's not the solution to the problem that we want. They need to be in internment camps and then sent back home. That's what they need to be. Life needs to be perfectly civilised, humane, but not very nice for people who've come here illegally. End of.
But Julia, this can't be right. Keir Starmer was going to smash the gangs.
Sorry, I
any day now. We've had some press releases every Monday for the last few weeks. The migration problem is getting solved. No. And all the while this carries on, politicians are just delaying the inevitable. And the inevitable is really clear. We have to immediately, tomorrow, disapply the human rights regime to every single person that breaks into this country illegally. If you break into this country illegally, you have given up. If you break the law, you do not enjoy its protection.
We're not going to torture you. You just have none of the normal rights. But I want to go further. That doesn't touch. I want to deal with the people who, like this 150,000,
Julia, deport them all.
No, exactly.
Them all.
But I don't care if someone's been living here 20 years.
No,
you're not
gone.
my priority to be deported. But if you're not in this country legally,
yes,
you don't get to stay.
Yes,
I don't understand why anyone queries that. Now, Nigel Farage queries that.
Not just the men, the women, the children too. If you have broken into this country, if you have overstayed a visa, you are a criminal on the run from the law.
Got no right
you
to
ought
be
to
here.
be chased down to the fullest extent possible.
I mean, we'll prioritise the people committing crimes.
Of course.
What about, we've got this deportation, we're told, of foreign criminals before they can appeal their sentence, but it's only for 23 countries. It doesn't include, the likes of Afghanistan or Iran or Eritrea, Syria or Sudan. Those are the countries which make up 70% of those who come as channel boat migrants. And also, by the way, the people who are coming from countries where their attitude towards women and girls is not in the modern age. It ain't 1950. It's 1250.
But Julia, in the 1250s in this country, people did not believe what some of these people who have come into our country believe they can do to women was acceptable. We have never had it in this country that you can organise yourself around to drive young girls, 12-year-old girls at a time, pick them up in your taxis, take them to your takeaway shops, take them upstairs and rape them.
In my lifetime, it's been legal to rape your wife.
After another. And the leaders of those grooming gangs are still walking the very same streets that the girls that were subjected to that live in and continue to do in this community, live in their own communities. We cannot even deport them. It is offensive. It is offensive for our government to claim it is deporting foreign criminals when the leaders of grooming gangs are still living in the same houses,
they
same
basically tear up their Pakistani
so I'm not Pakistani anymore.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I know. No, it's ridiculous. I'm of the view we are into close the borders territory to some countries. Countries which have a higher rate of criminality,
yes.
I say we close up. You are not welcome in this country. Nothing to do with your ethnicity. No, we're just going on the stats. You're a bad bet for us. You're in the same way as a nightclub will say, sorry, we're not letting in a group of 20 lads. You need to have women with you. Now they stop stag parties. They stop hen parties now because the women cause just as much trouble. That you're allowed to say, sorry, your name's not on the door, you're not coming in. But no. We know we have trouble with groups like you, so you're not coming in. Well, why don't we do that on our borders? We know we have trouble with people from your country. Statistically, you've got a really bad record. Albanians, Pakistanis, you've got a bad record in this country. So unless we can have some really cast iron guarantees that you are not going to be a problem, then I'm afraid you're not coming in. I'm not quite sure why there's an issue with that. Well, but it's probably bigoted to say so.
For years, Julia, expressing that opinion, which is common sense, which is the understanding of the majority of people in this country, has basically been banned from our public discourse to say that actually, do you know what, not all migrants are equal. That it is the chances are that a migrant from the United States of America is likely to be better for us than a migrant from
economically, crime-wise,
from Yemen, for example. It just is. As Kemi Badenoch said last year, and I think it was a big moment when she said this, not all cultures are equal. And the reality is, I have had enough of migration from a number of these countries where we know that, statistically speaking, as you say, they are likely to be overrepresented on every list I don't want and underrepresented on every list that I do want. And
higher rate taxpayers.
And a targeted migration system that works is not just going to be about, can you earn this amount of money? Have you got someone to sponsor you? It's also about, where are you from? Because we know that different cultures have different trends, and it's legitimate to say
they're all exactly the same and just as good. Apparently, they are just absolutely fine. I mean, it genuinely genuinely terrifying. But there we are. Sam Armstrong, plenty from you. I also want to talk about drivers over 70 who fail eye test facing ban in road safety overhaul, but it will also affect drink driving. I know you're unhappy about people in the rural areas not able to have a couple of pints under this rule and be able to drive home. Are they safe on the roads? Well, I mean, would the state back you up or back me up? Well, we're going to be talking to Edmund King from the AA a little bit later, but I know there's already some calls on this. I'd love to hear from you in particular on the deportation of foreign criminals before they even go to prison. But if you're sentenced to a prison term, you are going to be out. You wouldn't be able to appeal until you're abroad. That's only for a certain number of countries. And again, doesn't include most of the countries where we're actually getting criminals from, other than Albania. Is that the solution? And is your big concern, as it would appear to be from the Home Office Minister who was speaking on the radio this morning, on the telly this morning, that actually your biggest concern is the cost of prisons? I'm not that bothered about the cost of prisons. If they're committing criminal acts which deserve to have them put behind bars, I'm very happy to pay for that. I just wish they weren't here in the first place. Yeah, maybe they're tackling the wrong end of the problem. Give us your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
Oxford Street, which is the prime kind of shopping destination for London, huge attraction for tourists and Londoners alike, and yet here we go, private business having to warn people that actually it's not safe to have your phone out while you're walking along there shopping, whatever you're doing. Crime everywhere is a big problem, we know that, but in London in particular we have the consequences of some very clear political choices by this mayor, and that's what's making it worse. He says that keeping Londoners safe is his number one priority, but his budget simply doesn't follow that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. A couple of your messages coming in about the foreign criminals being deported as soon as they're convicted before they serve any time here, but maybe not serving any time behind bars at home. Will says, just get them out. Prison costs taxpayer money, gives them time to appeal, takes up space in an overcrowded system, and gives them the opportunity to join gangs and form networks. But we need to do medical checks, including DNA and DNA new arrivals, to make sure they don't return. James says, will never happen while we remain in the ECHR. Yasmin says, appeals and fair trials should be for British citizens, not the rest of the world. David says they won't be deported. They'll call in the human rights law as well. This deal with the 23 countries means they can appeal when they're at home, and therefore they would be allowed to do it, apparently. Evie says, that suits me to get them out and put a never return notice on them, including all biometric data to ensure when they break in again, they can be kicked back out on the same day. Kathleen, though, says, I can see this being yet another broken Labour promise. I'm with you, Kathleen, I'm afraid. Let's go to the phone line. So Jason is on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. And Jason is in Wiltshire. Jason, you want to talk about the driving law changes.
Yeah, morning, Julia.
Morning.
Thanks for taking the call again. I spoke to you last week.
Always good to get your calls on, my darling. What do you want to say?
Well, I've got a couple of sort of views on it. The first bit is to do with this over 70s. it's going to be obviously the amount of independence it's going to take off of people.
Well, the idea is that over 70, you're going to need to take an eye test to check that you are still safe to drive, and if you don't pass it, then you would lose your licence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want people who aren't safe on the roads to be in a large metal box with an engine having independence. Sorry, I don't.
No, but what you do find is the majority of accidents are caused by younger people.
They are.
Is this, again, another start of the... I don't want to be conspiracy theorist, but the climate con, let's try and get cars off the road.
Oh, they're definitely trying to get a few people...
let's go down that road. You know what I mean? We can another way to manipulate
they
people.
are also talking about more controls on younger drivers, for instance, that limiting the number of people they can have as passengers for the first 6 months, because actually it tends to be a bit of like, I just passed them a test, having a bit of a show off on a night out, either drinking or just sort of, bit boy racing. I mean, we know that's an issue, and we want to keep our youngsters alive. One of my rules, my daughter's like, do not get in a car with, a teenage boy, full stop. They are not safe drivers.
No, but they said I think it is America or somewhere, Canada, they do that already, that you can't drive with, past your test. You can't have more than so many people in. But the other one is to do with this breathalyzer with the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's brilliant. It should be zero. Mum would be a good one to ask on this, seeing she is the doc. When you sort of certain people that take medications, i.e. if they got asthma and stuff like that, or kidney problems, medications they can take can throw up results on a breathalyzer.
Okay, well, and again, that can go to court. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure there's a human right to go and drink alcohol and then get in a big metal box and then drive down the road. I just don't think there is.
No, I agree with that. But
there's lots of alcohol-free beers now. They're perfectly drinkable.
Not well. Yeah, it's to do with medications, Julia.
Yeah, but
people on inhalers and stuff. What are they supposed to do? Stop taking their medication?
No, but I think you can get a medical letter that will show that your level of... I'm pretty darn sure we can work our way around that.
I was going to say, your mum would be a good one to ask. Obviously, medical, her medical history and her knowledge and stuff.
All right. Jason used to be a patient at my mum when she was a GP, but I thought she was a bit harsh with him. But there we are. Jason, thank you for that. I appreciate that call. Just going to give Sam just a very, very, very brief chance to... I know you live in a rural area. You think that you shouldn't change the driving laws. They want to take it down to the Scottish level. Yeah, well, and what has Scotland got for doing that? Scotland is the only part of the UK where the number of deaths involving drink driving is going up quickly. It's going up a little bit in England, but mainly going up in Scotland. In Scotland, 5.5% of casualties on the road involve a driver over the drink drive limit. It's less in England, 4.9%. This doesn't work. Well, no, hold a second, because the drink drive limit is lower, and therefore more people are more likely to be above it. But it's going up at the fastest rate in England, right? It's the impact the change has had is to make it go up. All it's going to do is kill off local pubs in rural areas, and it's being pushed by people who live in London who aren't aware of this, which deaths involving drink driving are very low because people are driving more slowly anyway. 20 miles per hour, pretty much the whole of my local area, that's for sure. We'll talk to Urban King from the AA about all of that a little bit later. Up next, going to be talking to Major General Chip Chapman. He's the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence. Going to talk to him about where we are with the Chagos deal, with Palestine action, Ukraine, you name it. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Delighted to welcome my next guest to the show. He's Major General Chip Chapman. He's former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
An awful lot to talk about. Can we just start briefly with Palestine Action, though? 522 people arrested by the police on Saturday for holding up signs saying, you know, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action, a proscribed terrorist organisation. Was that the right thing for the police to do? And was it right for the government to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist group?
Well, prescription means that you shouldn't show support overtly for a prescribed terrorist entity, and they have been prescribed. So to say I support Palestine Action is an offence under the Terrorism Act 2000. What is unusual, possibly, under the way that they were prescribed is most people or most entities are prescribed for acts preparatory to terrorism or supporting terrorism overtly. Palestine Action was slightly different, that they were prescribed because of the serious damage to property, which is in the terrorist legislation 2000.
This was the attack which has been allegedly carried out by Palestine Action, because it's obviously going to court of the RAF planes.
Well, that's one of them, but there's, although it's a rarely used arm, it is in the legal definition, and more so than that, there is other intelligence, which because of the legal actions can't be disclosed at the moment.
Right. So when the government, we've heard some, I mean, we understand that Keir Starmer has said privately, you know, look, people just don't realise how serious this organisation is. People think it's just a nice flag wavy, worried about children dying of hunger in Gaza organisation, and it's not. It's very different from that.
Yeah, I think it is. But you can legally protest, but don't have those sorts of slogans in support of that.
You could argue that it shouldn't be prescribed, without saying I support Palestine Action, presumably.
Well, the High Court in July gave Palestinian Action the right to challenge its prescription, and that will be also ongoing through the courts. That will look at that sort of Terrorism 2000 legislation, I think. Yep. One of the things it does show you, though, that legislation prescription by itself is no panacea to mobilisation of people on the streets. No. Is what we saw for this.
No, indeed. It's interesting. A guest, a former Labour, now he's left Labour. They're too moderate for him. But a guest earlier was talking about how you know this was just a classic, you know, Labour government. Basically, they're, you know, beholden to the Israeli government and you know, trying to quell the opposition. Of course, I would say this government has been not supportive enough of our democratic ally in the Middle East. What do you make of the UK joining other usual suspect countries condemning Israel's plan for a new operation in Gaza? Do you think that Netanyahu's plan to basically seize control of Gaza City and eventually occupy the whole of Gaza, he says, then, you know, to root out Hamas, hopefully find the hostages who are remaining, some 22 who believed still to be dead, and then hand over control to a civilian Arab ruling body as yet unnamed. Do you think that is unworkable? Do you think it's desirable? Is Britain right to criticise it?
Well, let's look at what the Israeli objectives have always been since the 7th of October 23. They've had 4. The first one is the release of the hostages. There are still at least 20 who are alive, along with a number who are dead. The second one is to secure their borders. The third one is to destroy Hamas's military capabilities. And the final one is the collapse of Hamas governance. Yeah. To achieve the third one, destroying Hamas military capabilities, they believe that they are required to go into Gaza City, into 2 areas there in the north of the city and the central camps to achieve that mission. The difficult one is where that leads the hostages, and certainly what you have seen in the last week is a slight disruption in what we would call the strategy bridge between political intent and military power, where, for example, Lieutenant General Zamir, who's the chief of the defense staff in Israel, has said that this will potentially trap the Israeli military lead to harm to the hostages. The key answer to that at the end of the day is we'll have to wait and see.
And that is ultimately a political decision. I mean, look, we ostensibly would never have done any of those prisoner exchanges. We would never have got, if it had happened to us, we wouldn't have a single hostage back from Hamas if it had happened to us, because we don't negotiate with terrorists, but everyone insists that Israel does.
Yeah, and that's the key point, that even though Lieutenant General Samir has sort of said this might be slightly difficult, in all wars are fought for political objectives, and the military is subordinate to the political arm, and he will turn to the right, salute and get on with it, which is what he's doing. Yeah, indeed. I mean, again, it's a very difficult, it is a quagmire. And again, the reason why Israeli forces left, Gaza and Hamas took over in 2005 was because they didn't want to get bogged down in this. And again, we know there's a lot of dissent in Israel as well. Is it helpful for the British government, French governments, Canadians or others to say we would recognise a Palestinian state, regardless of whether the Hamas hostages are released or not, thereby completely derailing any negotiations for a ceasefire that were already in place, and for us to criticise Israel? Because there seems to be remarkably little criticism of Hamas, or indeed the Arab states that have been supporting Hamas in the past. Well, two things can be true at the same time. You can criticise Israel but still believe that they have a right to self-defence. So, for example, Article 34 of the Geneva Convention says that taking hostages is a war crime. So, I'd like to see more overt condemnation of Hamas for that. Yeah, and so is putting your military, underneath hospitals or schools or civilian areas. Yeah, but if, for example, and I don't necessarily think this is true, that Israel were to use the withdrawal of humanitarian support, food, that would also be a war crime. I think that the thing that which we're seeing really is we often say that wars have fought three times. Firstly, on the battlefield, secondly, in memory, thirdly, in the information domain. Yeah. I think what is crucial now is that Netanyahu has said that the Israeli military, must allow more foreign journalists in at the moment. And I think we'll get more ground truth if that comes to pass, rather than relying on sort of Hamas information ops, which is, I think, a lot of what we're seeing. Oh, I mean, we're just seeing, that's the thing, but it's not publicised. When the BBC and others put out footage, they're not pointing out this is only being given to us with permission from Hamas. Yeah, that's right. And so you'd like to see more balance. And I think Israel have been remiss in not allowing that. You would then get into the problems of what is proportionate and necessary in achieving their military objectives. Well, if we'd been fighting the Second World War, with camera phones in every person's hand, we would be condemned on a daily basis for what we did. No war survives the camera phone constantly on, because war is, well, from more experience than I do, war is brutal and brutish and horrible things happen. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a war crime, though. Yeah, and I think two of the things which have been missed here is we often talk about precaution and distinction. So distinction should be between military and civil targets, and precaution is, do the Israelis give a warning to people to get out if they're prosecuting military operations? The answer to that is they generally do, and in a way that no other government has ever done. Yeah, and the fact that Hamas have not allowed the civilian people to go is because they're seen as collateral damage, which can be used in information ops. So, I think the Israelis have done everything they can, And the ratio of civilian deaths to combatant deaths. I mean, 1.3 civilians dying for every combatant they believe they've attacked, and even on Hamas's own figures. So, 4 civilians have died, sadly, for every 3 Hamas terrorists they have caught. I mean, we would dream in any British military operation of such statistics. Well, I think people have to go back to when you were fighting what is essentially a total war in that region, as it was, for example, in Normandy 44. I think we killed something like 20,000 French civilians in the preparatory bombing for Normandy. If you're prosecuting those operations, these things can happen. We want to try and minimise it. 100%. Procedures do that, but sometimes the reality is slightly different. And of course, the answer is
Hamas doesn't do the October 7th attack, and having done it, they hand over the hostages, they give up their arms and to seize control of the Gaza territory, and then the war could be over tomorrow. So we all know how to end that war, don't we? Just fine. I want to ask you one other question. The Chagos Islands deal, terrible deal. I do not know why we're giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. They've never had a claim on them. Absolute nonsense. Even any claim on international law, absolute nonsense. And yet we're told the deal was going to cost £3.4 billion. That has been exposed as absolute nonsense. It's more than 10 times that. It's 35 billion quid, according to information under Freedom Information Act revelations. I mean, this is an astonishing amount of money to give away something we already own, isn't it?
Well, I think there are 3 points here. The first one is that we, under UN General Assembly Resolution 2066, we didn't respect the territorial integrity of Mauritius when we gave them independence in 1965. We took the Chagos Islands off them. That was against what we would say territorial...
They didn't own them then. They didn't own them. Mauritius has never had control of the Chagos Islands.
It's part of their territorial integrity, though, so it was part of what they should have been
French territory.
And that was a diplomatic mistake. The second diplomatic mistake, of course, was expelling the Chagosians in between 71 and 73. What we're really playing with these figures is arcane government finance rules and how you look at profiling things over a number of years. What the purist would say that accrual accounting in terms of resource accounting and budgeting, because that's what I did when I was running the budget in Northern Ireland as a chief of staff, would have the upfront costs. The government have not chosen to do that. They've used a social time preference rate, which takes inflation over 99 years into account. Therefore, that's how they come up.
That's how they come up with these figures. But we're still going to end up paying for it. Major General Chip Chapman, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate that. Sam Armstrong, I mean, it is only this government could spend 35 billion giving away something that we already own. We've got no reason to give. It's not giving it back to Mauritius. They've never owned it. They've got no right to it. It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and the worst is yet to come. This is a government that's still negotiating with the EU. This is a government that has never met, a bunch of international lawyers that it doesn't wish to cave into. And I remind everyone, it's August, it's summer, it's the holiday season, but we've still got another 4 years of this.
Don't.
4 more years.
Deep sighs,
Julia.
Everyone. 11:49. You've got a couple of minutes of ads right now. Then we're going to be talking about Nicola Sturgeon. Her memoirs are out on Thursday, but what have we already found out? We'll be talking to journalist Ian McWhirter up next. This is Talk.
So this was an Instagram post by Rupert Lowe, by the MP Rupert Lowe. And what was he saying in that Instagram post?
It said, migrants landed in Great Yarmouth now. I'm giving chase, and I'll do everything in my power to deport them.
He was under the impression that you were a group of migrants who were going to be landing in his constituency.
Yes.
The slight issue with that, of course, is that you're not. You're on a charity rowing boat.
Yes.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:51 is the time. Let's talk about Nicola Sturgeon. I know we'd rather not. We thought we got rid of her. But the former First Minister of Scotland has written about her mental torture of being investigated by police in her new book, Frankly. It's published on Thursday. She's also been talking about her miscarriage, rumours about a lesbian affair with a female French ambassador to the UK, plus her relationship with the late Alex Salmond. Well, let's talk about what she's had to say with Ian McWhirter. He's a columnist for The Times and also The Spectator. He's also author of the book Disunited Kingdom, How Westminster Won a Referendum but Lost Scotland. Very, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I mean, we long awaited memoirs. She was always going to write something. We knew, she would get it serialised. She'll make a load of money from these things, more from the serialisation than anything else. But is this just a sort of wasn't I wonderful on lockdown? Didn't I make all the right decisions? Wasn't I the best thing that Scotland ever had? Sort of pat on the back that she's giving herself, or from the clips, from the excerpts we've seen, are her memoirs perhaps a little bit, warts and all?
Well,
Oh, Ian, we've got a terrible line there. I don't know if you've just suddenly moved. Can you just speak again so we can check the line's working? Oh, for goodness sake, Ian, can we hear you? Can you hear us? Right, with something we can't hear him at the moment. That's not very good for an interview. Thankfully, Sam Armstrong was still with us. Tell you what, let's play a quick clip actually of an interview that Nicola Sturgeon has done speaking to ITV's Julie Etchingham, particularly about the case involving the rapist Isla Bryson, all around this whole mad argument that Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP was having, supported by Labour and Lib Dems, by the way, about how, basically, trans women are women and therefore they should be in women's prisons, even if you're a rapist and you're clearly a man. Let's have a little watch and a listen.
He became unstuck over the questions about the transgender prisoner, the rapist, Isla Bryson. Why couldn't you answer that question?
I think I was caught up in the...
Will you answer it now, whether you believe Isla Bryson was a man?
Isla Bryson identified as a woman. I think what I would say now is anybody who commits the most heinous male crime against women probably forfeits the right to be, the gender of their choice.
They forfeit to be the gender of their choice. That's quite... I mean, this actually goes to the heart of the difficulty around this.
That probably was not the best phrase to use, but
they forfeit their right to be the gender of their choice.
If you rape a woman, then I think you probably... The debate about whether they should be called a woman or not, probably...
Well, why don't you simply say then Isla Bryson is a biological male?
They are a biological male, but that's about whether it gets back into the self-ID thing. I should have been much more straightforward. I wasn't. But that's because of the debate. We'd lost all sense of rationality in this debate. I'm partly responsible for that.
Thank God she's gone from office. What an absolute Egypt that woman is. I mean, remember that interview that basically was the end of everything, not just that, there was being questioned by the police over issues that are still going before the courts related to her husband and other senior figures in the SNP, but also all the other abject failures that Nicola Sturgeon has overseen, Sam Armstrong. But she's obsessed with this idea. Well, if someone self-IDs, did you hear that? Isla Bryson, a man convicted of raping 2 women who pulled on some pink leggings, showing his veg and his meat and 2 veg, put on a wig and a fake boobs, and she still wants to give him his preferred product. She's gone as far as they are. No, he's a man. He's not a trans woman. He's a man. He's a rapist. And even then, when she says she doesn't think that biological males, use the word you want, man and woman, we know what they mean. There's no subset of either of those. She actually says, well, if they commit the most heinous crimes against women. No, even if you're a shoplifter and you're a man, you haven't committed a crime against a woman, you still shouldn't be in a woman's prison. Why? Because you're a sodding man.
Julie, do you remember?
She's insane. I'm sorry. She was fated as like one of the leaders of the world in terms of great women leaders.
We were told that this was the single most gifted politician of our age during the pandemic.
If only we had a Nicola Sturgeon for Westminster.
So strong. She can't even speak, as they would say out there. She couldn't get her words out. She was jumbled. She's in such a total mess. Now, to be fair...
She should have been clearer.
To be fair, I don't totally blame her, because she is a victim, just like everybody else, of the woke mind virus that has sent
She's an intelligent, educated woman.
Everybody
she knows
mad.
whether someone with meat and 2 veg is a man or not, whether they should be in male prison.
But they have tied themselves up in
Unforgivable.
so many knots that, as I say, they cannot even express a sentence. They can't ask. They can't answer a basic question like, "What is a woman?" And look, it's not just her. We had a lefty on earlier who asked us, "What is an Albanian?"
Yeah,
he couldn't even understand what an Albanian is. They have to start obliterating words so they don't mean what
again.
they
And
think
this is what we all well talked about. If you just change the meanings of words, then you win. No, you don't change the meaning of words. Like genocide, for instance.
The inmates are running the asylum, Julia.
Genuinely. I am so incandescent about this. I'm very frustrating, as you will have gathered. We've completely lost the line with Ian McWhirter. So that was about three words he managed to get before we lost it. But she's also talked about the mental torture being investigated by police. Talked about her miscarriage. Also, these rumours about her having an affair with the female French ambassador to the UK.
Yeah, which she hardly put to bed, by the way.
No, but she says she views her sexuality as non-binary, and she's rumoured to be, that she's essentially broken up with her husband, and she's rumoured to be in a relationship. But given how many politicians now are open about their sexuality, and given certainly in Scotland, numerous high-level women have been open about their homosexuality, I genuinely think if she is gay or bi or whatever it is, I don't care.
Yeah.
But don't live a lie and pretend you're happily married in a heterosexual relationship when you're not. That's lying to everybody. But also, crucially, there comes a point when you have, I would say, a duty of care to other young lesbians, where actually you're not fighting to get ahead. You're the First Minister of Scotland. Why are you embarrassed and ashamed about your sexuality? Because you're saying it's your personal life. No, when you get married, you're making a statement about your personal life to the world. Why are you being so coy about your real sexuality when you're already... You can say it's none of my business, and that's fine, but you basically lied about it.
But there is just this permanent weird coyness with Sturgeon, in which she sort of presented herself as this great figure, and yet we don't know anything about it. And oh well, you're pure as anything. Yet the business is all a bit murky there.
My thing,
you won't tell us about it.
Still, will never forgive her, and I never forgive the Westminster government. We'll never forgive her for putting kids in masks. They were just so happily putting kids in masks throughout COVID, 8 hours a day, and Matt Hancock followed suit with a little flick of his hand on WhatsApp and put kids in masks here. Genuinely, they need to be in prison for that. They need to be in prison for that.
As someone who believes in the union, I'm very grateful to her, because she has single-handedly destroyed the case for Scottish independence by just being so dreadful.
Well, absolutely. I was one of the people who really thought... I didn't agree with her on much, but actually, I thought she was actually a stonkingly good politician. Never played the woman card, never not that. Biological female, she would say, they, them. Honestly, she is an absolute embarrassment to all women, trans and otherwise. Coming up, we are going to talk to Kevin Hollerake, chair of the Conservative Party. Also got a caller about Nicola Sturgeon as well. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's great to have your company. Don't forget, if you've missed anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. It's called The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Easy to find. You can hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, in a couple of moments, we'll take a call from David in Coventry on Nicola Sturgeon and her memoirs. We're also going to be talking about Labour freeing over 26,000 criminals early, some including people sentenced to more than a decade behind bars. Also going to be talking more about the plan to, well, deport criminals who've committed an act, get convicted, get sentenced before they are even put into prison. They will be sent abroad. Yeah, it doesn't actually involve criminals from large parts of the world where we don't have a deal. We'll talk about that. Plus, white working class children in Britain are being written off by society. Who's saying that? Well, pretty much anyone who's paying attention. But the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has admitted she was speaking ahead of A-level results day on Thursday, saying it was a national disgrace that so many white working class pupils weren't able to get the grades needed for university. Meanwhile, university diversity targets mean that students can win places with only 3 grade E's. Only some students, though. Should you really be going to university if you've got 3 grade E's? I would say you shouldn't. You shouldn't be wasting your money, and neither should we. Plus, going to talk more about the Chagos Island deal. It doesn't cost £3.4 billion like we were told. It's actually cost 10 times that, 35 billion quid. And we're going to be talking to the AA's Edmund King about drivers over the age of 70 who could face being banned from the roads if they failed compulsory eye tests over the age of 70. It's part of a radical overhaul to the UK's road safety laws, and it would also see a reduction in the drink drive limit to the level of Scotland's level, England currently higher, and it would punish drivers with penalty points if their passengers failed to wear a seatbelt. Also tougher penalties for uninsured drivers. I would just say, like, frankly, 10 years imprisonment, that would kind of focus the mind, wouldn't it? But we don't have any room in our prisons, do we? So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of those topics, and indeed anything else you want to give us a call on. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Of course, for much of the country, we are in now an amber heat wave alert and warning. It's an amber warning, so good luck to everyone. Let's just hope we all survive to the end of the day, because apparently summer in August, temperature going a little bit high, apparently we could all die. Make sure you're carrying your bottle of water that human beings have always carried since the beginning of time to keep them alive while the weather is sunny and hot. Or you could enjoy it. Maybe when you're working from home, pop down to the beach, enjoy the garden and enjoy your summer holes. That's what we just used to do when it was warm, before we all pretended that climate change was killing us all. But anyway, enjoy. Right now, let me introduce you once again to commentator Sam Armstrong, who is joining us for the full show. You and I both, I think, have pretty strong views on Nicola Sturgeon, who we were just talking about. Sadly, we lost our guest, but I mean, let's just take a quick call from David in Coventry and I'll get your thoughts on what he has to say. David is on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. David, you wanted to have your say about Nicola Sturgeon, whose memoirs are out on Thursday, basically about what a horribly difficult time she's had doing her job.
Julia, I have a bone to pick with you.
Oh.
You described Nicola as an Aegis. Please don't. You're insulting all the rest of the Egypts out there.
It's very difficult when you're on air trying to give a word that conveys your contempt and anger, which isn't going to get you taken off air.
Well, she's in the same category as Ahern, as Trudeau and whatever. Once they're out of office, you realise the total damage they've done. Intelligent people realise the damage they were doing while they were there.
Yeah, well, exactly. But she's been feted, even in lockdown, when she was doing exactly the same things as Boris Johnson, the same rules. He was being castigated for them eventually. No, she was going up in the polls. Everyone was saying, oh, it's Nicola Sturgeon, she must be doing it for the right reasons. And they were all doing it just on the back of an envelope.
Exactly. And they were lying and lying and lying again and again and again, and that is now coming out more and more and more. And I think Hancock and others should be prosecuted with a view to putting them in prison.
Absolutely. And the Isla Bryson affair, that kind of did it for her, didn't it? She made such an idiot of herself, and it was very useful for those of us who've been arguing on this course since 2012 onwards, that actually it was so obvious that a man who had committed 2 rapes and was convicted just by putting a wig on and a pair of tight pink trousers shouldn't be put in a woman's prison. And she's still referring to him as they.
Unfortunately, she's too stupid to accept that he is, to put it politely, extracting the urine, as is the whole most of the trans lobby. There are a few genuinely trans people out there, but it is vanishingly small.
Well, even the ones who are genuinely don't actually change their sex, do they? It's as simple as that. Really appreciate your call, David. Thank you so much. Right, I will. Apologies to all Egypts out there. Sam Armstrong, your response to that?
Well, look, what I just cannot get over, and we said it just before the break, so I apologise for repeating it, is this woman was literally feted by our media, by the BBC, by everyone.
Never
I saw
properly challenged.
Commentator after commentator say how wonderful she was. She cannot answer basic questions. The moment she was subjected to even the slightest of scrutiny, the whole facade crumbled.
Yeah.
It was like the emperor's new clothes with her. It really was.
Absolutely. Bye-bye, Nicola. Not missed at all. You want to come on the show and face some proper questions? Let's play. Oh, by the way, I'm a biological female. You seem to know what those are now. Right, let's go to our next guest. Delighted to welcome Kevin Honorake to the show, Conservative MP, also now chairman of the Conservative Party. A very good afternoon to you, Kevin.
Nice to see you, Julia.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us. So much to talk to you about. I mean, let's start with some of the criminal and migrant stories that are in the news, including the fact that Labour said they want to they have freed 26,000 prisoners early in just 7 months. Hundreds of those are people who've been jailed, men, for more than 10 years. At the same time, they've announced today they're going to basically deport some foreign criminals just to 23 countries, to be deporting them as soon as they are convicted, as soon as they are sentenced. If they've got a jail sentence, they go straight away to the airport, off they go to be deported, and they can appeal from abroad. But we don't know whether or not they're going to serve a single day behind bars, even if they've committed crimes as serious as rape or GBH. Talk to me about the problems in our prisons. Are either of these the solutions?
No, of course not. Far too soft on criminals, particularly those who have been convicted of very serious offences. Those people should serve their time. We need more prison places in the UK for people who are UK citizens who commit crimes. In terms of people who are deported, I'm not against that as long as those people who are deported face justice where they're deported to. So you've got to make sure you have arrangements in place that those people go to jail. If people are convicted of serious crimes here, you simply deport them. As Alex Chalk, my former colleague, said, if those people are then can walk freely in their home countries, then that is no form of justice. So we've got to make sure people who are convicted of serious crimes face justice.
I would certainly rather pay my taxes towards the 54 grand of keeping a rapist behind bars than a rapist get deported to be walking freely the next day.
Yeah, he's got to face justice. We've been too soft for too long, Julia. I think you probably agree with that. You know, people have got to understand in this country, if you live in this country, if you're a citizen, you commit a crime, you go to jail. If you are a foreign national, you're going to be deported, you're never coming back, but you'll face justice one way or the other.
But you say that now. Why weren't you lot? I mean, I've got to tackle you on that. Why weren't you lot doing all this when you were in power?
Well, listen, we softened up in many different areas. There's no doubt, though, you know, we should have provided more prison places. But having toughened up some of the sentences and made those sentences longer, so people did face proper justice. But we made our mistakes, Julia. I've said that to you many times on this programme. And I think the reality is we were too soft. Of course, we were all frustrated by that at the time, but nevertheless, there's also lots of pressures on the system all the time too.
And there's a lot of costs. And I know a lot of the time, you know, under Cameron Osborne, you were dealing with the post economic crash. I get all of that. But have you come round to sense since the election, or even in the last year or two before the election, because the polls have said British people aren't happy with what you've done, or did you always think, we're being too soft, we should do more about that? Were you speaking up on this issue behind the scenes, for instance?
I always thought we were too soft. And I'm very pleased now we've got a leader in place, Kemi Badenoch, who is not soft, who is very tough. Yeah, I'm not saying the situation is easy. Governing is difficult because there are limitations on your resources, so you have to make compromises at times. But on too many things, whether it be migration, whether it be deportations, whether it be crime, particularly serious crime, we've been too soft. And of course, I've spoken about those things from the backbenches. I've spoken to ministers about it over the years, and I share responsibility for the position we're in, which is not good enough. But we don't enter politics for simply to be a politician. We enter it to try and improve the system and make things better. I've got 4 children. I worry about those children. I want them to make sure they can walk safely on the streets. So many things I'm concerned about too, just like you are for your family, I'm sure.
Well, that's it. I mean, you echo Robert Jedrick, one of your colleagues, Shadow Justice Secretary. He's written in the papers yesterday that he's got 3 daughters, and he says he's worried for their safety, particularly with the boat migrants, and particularly with arrival of so many young men into this country, undocumented, all by definition criminals, because they're already criminals at the point they enter the country illegally. Many from countries where they simply do not have the same attitudes towards women and girls. I mean, 70% of the boat migrants are from, let's go through it, I mean, Afghanistan, Iran, Eritrea, Syria and Sudan. Not countries renowned for their wonderfully forward-thinking views on women and children, and indeed on gay people as well. Are you as concerned as he is, and what should we do about it?
Of course I'm concerned. And let's be clear about this. The vast majority of people who come to this country from another nation are not criminals.
Yep.
But nevertheless, there is a disproportionate number of crimes committed by people from some of those nations you refer to. And so you've got to take a very cautious approach to this. And for me, I think particularly in the case of illegal migration, which you just don't know who you're getting, then we've got to stop that in its tracks completely. And we tried to do that through the Rwanda plan, which was blocked by Labour. We finally got it through the Commons and then blocked by the courts. What we've said we will do for things like that, for this illegal migration, where there's much greater uncertainty about whether those people are likely to commit crimes or not, is we're going to scrap the human rights laws that relate to those immigration status, so we can deport people to Rwanda.
Well, hold on a minute. You haven't committed to leaving the European Court or European Convention of Human Rights. That's up for review.
We have committed. What I said and what we've committed to, and I'll talk about that in a second in the ECHR. But what we've committed to is disapplying the ECR regime, in our case, domestic law, the Human Rights Act, from immigration cases. We've already committed to that.
Okay.
Now, whether we leave the ECHR completely, I'm very relaxed about. What Kemi Badenoch has done, she has asked Lord Wolfson, a very eminent lawyer, to look into this and look at the best way of managing the ECHR if we're going to leave.
But you know as well as I do, part of the problem is actually interpretation of the law, and human rights legislation is incorporated into British law. So even leaving that, you've still got your tribunal judges who think that an Albanian son liking his chicken nuggets in Britain, not Albania, is more important, or a paedophile's right to his family life with kids he's not even allowed to see unsupervised, for goodness sake, is more important than the safety of people in this country. You've still got those lawyers in the system. You haven't, as judges, you haven't got a chance of dealing with this issue.
But I don't agree with that. But you're right, there is problems right now in terms of interpretation. But the Human Rights Act embeds the principles of the European Convention on Human Rights, overseen by the European Court. Yeah. That's the way it embeds itself within domestic law. Now, Parliament is sovereign. So this is not the rule of lawyers, it's the rule of law. So if we make a law, judges have to follow it. Where it's going wrong here is the interpretation of that law is not clear. And it's not up to date.
Well, the thing is, it is clear. I mean, if you read Article 8, it's 2 paragraphs. They just read the first paragraph and seem to apparently be unable to read any further.
Yeah, well, that's right. So we need to clarify the point, is that the safety and security of British citizens should override any issues around human rights for a foreign national who's committed offence in the UK.
Your party leader, Kemi Badenoch, she's been in Epping this morning and she's been meeting some of the protesters who protested around the Bell Hotel, one of the asylum hotels. I was sent her an interactive map over the weekend, which is very clear, not to be used for criminal purposes, showing where all local asylum hotels are, well, in any area. But certainly I was able to see the number that in my local area, one very, very near my home, I was able to identify, and I've been to visit them. Very, very, very unfriendly reaction I certainly got from the now private hotel housing illegal migrants. do you think it's justified for people to be protesting? And do you support local people protesting their local asylum hotels as long as they remain peaceful?
Yes, of course I do. We believe in freedom of speech in this country. People should be able to peacefully protest about anything. So, yes, of course. I mean, I had an asylum centre planned for my constituency, somewhere just north of York, Linton-on-Ouse, and I took part and led, in fact, a very vociferous campaign against that, because I did think it endangered potentially the local residents and made life just unbearable for local residents. Luckily, we were successful. So I would never stand in the way of somebody peacefully protesting against something they're very concerned about. People are worried. You know it, Julia. I know it. People are worried. You cannot expect people to stay quiet when they're worried about their safety.
But again, they need to know
there was
a deliberate policy for people not to be allowed to know when they're asylum hotels. Now, this government and your government had actually, they pledged to, end the use of asylum hotels, but it's been continuing. But what they're doing instead is they've got organisations and companies like Circo and others, and they are basically renting out or on huge long contract, often paying up to double local expected rents on the market rate to basically house these migrants. There are some councillors are talking about actually, whole streets of homes, whole new housing developments meant for local people are basically being taken up to be housing asylum seekers. There is an element where once these people are out of these hotels, we won't know where we are. There'll be not there's any real tracking of where they are anyway. We will have no idea of knowing where they are. And at least parents who can say, I am worried, the Bell or the other asylum hotels in Canary Wharf and otherwise, they can actually say, I know that that's an asylum hotel. I'm worried about the behaviour by the men there towards my teenage daughter. They can avoid that area. When these people are just in every local street, largely, by the way, in poorer areas where those rents are more affordable for the Home Office to pay for, we're not going to have a clue who these people are and where they are.
Right. No, he's right. And what their approach is, this crazy approach of smashing the gangs to solve this problem, which we know won't work. You're just playing whack-a-mole. You smash one gang, another one will pop up. That's not going to work. All they're doing instead is that people are coming here, and that's a 50% increase on last year. They're racing through the asylum system to get them out of hotels to put them in private rented accommodation, exactly as you were saying, which creates even more of an incentive to come here in the first place. Labour's in this doom loop, which it claims is a solution. It's actually a disastrous policy, and they won't confront the reality, as many observers have said, including people from all sides of the political spectrum, that the only way you deal with this is put a proper deterrent in place, and that deterrent has to be deportation to a third country where your asylum claim is heard. And if it's successful, you stay in that country.
But it needs to be everyone. It needs to be everyone. It can't be 250 people,
exactly right.
Which is what the plan was. OK. You said earlier you support people who peacefully protest. Do you support then the 522 people who peacefully protested in Parliament Square at the weekend? They were arrested for holding signs up saying, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action being a proscribed terrorist group?
Well, I think the government's got itself in a total mess with this, to be honest. I mean, I'm not a supporter of Palestine Action in terms of the group, but I think many people who were protesting weren't doing so because they associate themselves with it's been defined as a terrorist group. They were concerned about Palestine, and who is not?
Well, they can do that without supporting the Palestine Action, then, can't they?
Yes, and that's what they should do. But I think the government's going to see hundreds more people being arrested, and I just don't see this as a tenable situation to deal with this. But I want
to clarify then. It's not tenable, so we shouldn't be arresting them. So it's OK to support a prescribed terrorist group?
Well, of course not.
Well, then they should be arrested.
It was this government who defined it as such. Now it's defined it as that. Of course, it has to follow through with that action. And I would urge anybody...
You don't think it should be a prescribed terrorist group?
I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. But because apparently some information I don't have access to about the security implications of Palestine Action. But what I would urge anybody, if you're going to protest against what's happening in Palestine, and there are good reasons.
There's no country called Palestine.
Gaza, right? I was just correcting myself.
Sorry.
And then do so outside a protest organised by Palestine Action, because clearly that is a group that many people have security concerns about, but I don't think any problem in protesting against some of the problems we're seeing in Gaza.
OK, just finally, let's talk about the small matter of 35 billion quid of our hard-earned taxpayers' money that's going to go to the Mauritian government for unfeasible reasons, as far as I can tell, for the Chagos deal. Keir Starmer had claimed that we're looking at a £3.4 billion bill for the people say return, no, the giving away of the Chagos Islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean to Mauritius. But in fact, according to a Freedom of Information request, it's going to cost 10 times that, as he claimed. What do you make of 35 billion quid, given the state of our public finances right now? £51 billion black hole identified by an economic institute only last week in the public finances, but 35 billion going to the Mauritian government?
The whole thing's a bad joke, to be honest. It's completely ridiculous. Giving away our sovereign territory and then renting it back is just completely ludicrous. Lying about the numbers involved, which clearly he has done, to actually manipulate that information. I mean, it just shows that Keir Starmer is more interested in his lefty legal friends than he is the everyday citizens of this country. It's completely ludicrous. There was no need for it. And he charged headlong down that route because of some obscure legal judgment somewhere, and really just there was no necessity.
But to be
do
fair,
this.
you guys didn't come to the table and actually agree a deal. But under the Tories, there were negotiations. That should never have happened.
Well, discussions always happen.
You started the ball rolling.
I was never in those rooms.
I would guess that. I would imagine you would give that short shrift. Yes.
Well, I certainly would have done, and I can't. James Cleverly tells me he was giving it short shrift as well. But sometimes you have to have discussions. But to actually do this, move on from efforts around diplomacy to actually giving away your own territory, then renting it back to the tune of £35 billion when with so many other pressures on our public finances is completely ludicrous. It is a bad joke. But it characterises a couple of things. Keir Starmer's general approach to the citizens of this country and his ability to negotiate, which is clearly terrible.
It's genuinely shocking. I would not let that man buy me a Mars bar. I really wouldn't. I ended up paying £50 for it. Kevin Hollingray, great to talk to you, Chairman of the Conservative Party. Thank you for that. Sam Armstrong's still with me. Now, often Kevin and I come to blows. Yes. He's actually, I think he's rather a sensible chap as they go, and would give short shrift to an awful lot. He seems to me to be someone who's just very straightforward. He's not of the sort of the metropolitan classes in that sense. But what would you like to come back on?
Well, I just think the Chagos Islands just underlines the whole problem the Conservative Party is finding itself in, which is they did start these negotiations, and I'm sorry, it doesn't wash to say that James Cleverly had to sit there through all of those meetings in which it was discussed. It doesn't wash.
It was a genuinely obscure. It was a court that we are not about those court decisions, and it was again. It's just like the same as the UN and all these international courts. They are now completely and utterly controlled by random nations at the behest of China.
The issue is the Conservative Party basically spent the latter part, the 14 years it had in government, saying that, we're running the country well, we're administering it well. But actually, the public are crying out for someone that believes something that is going to act, really show that it's going to do it, come what may, not just do it.
Do you think the public trusts anyone, like whether it's the Tories, whether it's whether it's Reform? I just get the impression that a lot of people. I mean, Reform are climbing high in the polls. Kemi Badenoch simply can't seem to get any inroads there. Now that may change or may not change as we get closer to a general election, whether or not she lasts through another year in office, and whether or not Robert Jenrick or someone else takes over. But I get a very strong impression from a lot of people that they're not entirely convinced that there is anybody who is kind of serious enough, genuine enough. No one really trusts a single word any sodding politician says. And I now am of the view, having not been a cynic on this for many years, that they're quite right on that.
I'm of the view that we have not yet found the solutions in a person for the problem that
we haven't found our Millet.
Our country faces. Now, I have hope. I have to have hope, because I cannot allow myself to come to believe that this country, that the greatest story in the entirety of human history, the greatest empire that was ever built, a country that's given so much to the world, a country that's so beautiful, that's made so many inventions, that sports, that everything that we've given the world. I cannot believe that all of this is just going to carry on coming to a sad end.
No, exactly. And here's the other key thing also, genuinely. A politician, the number one requirement I will have in any politician is that you actually like your country
and
you
that live
respect
here.
the people who live here. Yeah, that would be. If you have any shame at all about being British, the British flag, the British people, our history.
But
then
they do,
please
Julia.
do not apply for the job of being Prime Minister of this country.
They
Simple as
do.
that.
I sit in the meetings
I know,
in Westminster
they
with them
really
for
do.
years, and they don't like people in this country. They just don't like them. I promise the listeners, they don't like them, and nor do too many people in the media either.
Oh no, absolutely. That's why they think if we find out any facts, we're just going to go riot. I mean, that is genuinely what they think of us. We need to change it, guys. 12:27 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. I know lots of people want to have their say on Chagos Islands and Lily Don. Delightful Nicola Sturgeon. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Thank you to the 10,000 plus people who signed my petition, says Sheila Braverman, objecting to these migrant hotel plans. Very pleased that the Home Office has listened to local people and local Conservative councillors and dropped plans to put illegal migrants and asylum seekers in the heart of Waterlooville.
You want to close the hotels, the government's closing the hotels.
Yeah, but they're also putting them into...
the demand was close the hotels, government's doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure a lack of social housing as the net result of that is something people are necessarily going to welcome.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. It's coming up to 12:30. Take a couple of your calls before we get to our next topic. Talk about white working class pupils apparently being let down at school, but also why diversity rules at university means you could just get 3 grade E's at A-level and still get into university. Is that a good idea for anybody? Least of all the person with the 3 grade E's. Plus, we'll talk to the president of the AA, Edmund King, about a prospect of new driving laws affecting whether you can drink, whether your passengers have their seatbelts on, and crucially, if you're over 70, whether you're safe to drive. That's all coming up. Let's get your phone calls on now, though. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. James is on the line in Buckinghamshire. James, you want to talk about a topic we've just been talking about with James Hollingbrake, the Chagos Islands and the £35 billion bill.
Yes, it's a wow, isn't it?
I mean, isn't it just?
Isn't it just right? So I'm in a very fortunate position that I'm self-employed. Therefore, I have to submit my own tax returns and, pay. I've told my accountant I refuse to pay any more than my liability last year.
Good luck with that, my love.
I will suffer the consequences. I'm not going to pay into something I don't agree with anymore. I pay quite a lot of money every year, right? Yep. So, twice a year, July and February, end of Jan. Why? What? Why?
The trouble is we're not allowed to choose which taxes we pay for. Well, unfortunately, please don't get yourself into trouble. But I understand the sentiment. I'm kind of the view, I think we should organise, like, say, London and elsewhere, day of action where we all refuse to pay our tube fares or bus fares, given that apparently loads of people don't pay and don't care about paying and no one prosecutes them. Why the hell should I pay? But we all just risk that we're the people who end up getting prosecuted.
Yeah, but I absolutely. I've got loads. I've quite a few friends that are also self-employed, and it's not just me just saying this to but my friends that are in that position where we dictate or have a chance to say I'm not paying. We're all saying we're not paying. It's
just fed up with it.
We're just fed up with paying money into a system that we don't agree with. I voted Labour by absolutely appalling decision I made. And
how's that working out for you?
No, it's not really, though, is it?
And do you mind me asking, and feel free not to answer, but you voted Labour because you were fed up with the Tories, or you've been a lifelong Labour voter, or?
Well, no, I'm kind of like slightly right of Tony Blair-ish, but I didn't think
That's basically where Nigel Farage is now. I mean, honestly, the shifting of our... people say to me, you're right-wing. I don't think I'm right-wing at all. I don't think putting people in prison for committing crimes or having border control. There's nothing right-wing about these views. I'm actually a centrist. It's just the centre has moved so far left, put everyone on welfare, open borders, that we count as far right now.
Yeah, you kind of carry the shame of thinking, outside of my own little bubble, you think, if I say these things, you're going to be labelled as a right-wing person, and so I am not. I believe in so many social issues and believing in supporting people, and national health and stuff. But you can't label someone that thinks, hang on, this isn't working anymore, and your views aren't my views, and I don't think my views are the wrong for society.
No, you're probably representative of the majority. You really are. James, so appreciate your call, but please don't get yourself in trouble with the tax man. There are other ways of dealing with this, but I understand the sentiment. I think a lot of people would agree with it. Let's go to George. He's in Dundee. George, as a Scotsman, I'm going to guess in Dundee, you want to have your views on Nicola Sturgeon, whose memoirs are out this Thursday. Oh, yeah. Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Hang on to your hats, everyone.
I started getting flashbacks when you started speaking about her. I regard her. Now, I come from Yes City. Dundee is supposedly Yes City. But I regard her as
yes
one
to
of
independence,
the most, Yes. I regard her as one of the most evil leaders of a British political party.
Evil? That's a strong word.
I'll tell you why. Her intransigence, her lies, her manipulation of figures during COVID, the treatment of the elderly, the young and the dead during COVID. Every day, drunk on power appearing on our screens. Her way or no way. 6 inches off school doors while having children sitting in mass in the classroom. 6 inches off doors to improve circulation. As for her sexuality, I couldn't care less.
Me neither.
But she lied and she lied and she lied. Dishonesty. The most glorious thing about her reign was that it was eventually women, normal women, that brought her down.
Oh, George. Oh, every single word. George, we love you. Thank you very much indeed. 12:35 is time. Going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about why white working class pupils are being failed and why people who fit a diverse category can get into university with lower A-level grades. Are we turning into the American system? Is this like Harvard? That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:27 is the time. Let's talk about getting kids into university. Now, I'm of the view far too many of our youngsters go to university. 50% was that target from Tony Blair. Now, an awful lot of young people are going to university, getting a piece of paper in a subject not worth anything, which no employer wants, telling them they've got a degree and coming out with 50 grand plus worth of debt. But there is certainly a problem with certain kids from certain backgrounds getting into university. White working class pupils are being written off. Says who? Well, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Let's talk about this with Tony Breslin, former chief examiner of an exam board and author of Lessons from Lockdown. A very good afternoon to you, Tony.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. I've heard this white working class people's being written off by society thing. I mean, virtually every year for about 15 years, once they suddenly realised it was white kids who were doing worse rather than kids from ethnic minorities. But basically, Bridget Phillipson says, and this is ahead of A-level results day this Thursday and GCSE results day next Thursday, that it was a national disgrace that so many white working class peoples were unable to get the marks needed for university, and they don't get what they need to achieve and thrive. Why don't they?
Well, the underachievement of working class children for years and years, as long as the education system has existed, working class kids have not performed to their ability. And indeed, in every advanced education system in the world, you will find the underachievement of the most disadvantaged. So, you know, this isn't a new thing. I think what is good is that it has been recognised. And I think it causes us to think differently about diversity. Of course, we should think about diversity in terms of ethnicity, but not just ethnicity. You know, we have diversity in so many ways. And of course, in terms of income and family background and all of that.
But this is, are they being failed by the schools themselves? Or is it, if you've got, you know, if you're from a poor family, and particularly white working class family, your parents may be semi-literate themselves, they may not have had a good schooling themselves, they don't really care about school. We know there's a massive, you know, rate of children who just like barely return to school. They let you bunk off school. No one really cares. No one bothers reading to you. You're put in front of the telly. You're on your computer games until 2 in the morning. You're not given breakfast in the morning. And by the way, we're not talking about your ordinary working class families who do the best for their kids, but a lot of the kids who are failing are kids from families where the families are failing the kids. Or is it happening at the schools?
Well, it's not an either or. It really is all of the above. And I think, in fairness, you know, an awful lot of the vast majority of working class parents do all they can to help their children succeed. But working class children have always dealt with that range of issues. There are fewer books in the home. There isn't a culture of education. Their parents are less likely to have been successful in education terms themselves. And all of these things add together. They're kind of salami slices. And when you add them together, the chances of a child from a disadvantaged background progressing to university, even in spite of the 50% target and all of that, the reality is that as we've opened up access to university, what we find is even more middle-class children going to university.
Yeah, but again, are they going because they're middle class, or are they going because they've got the grades, because they've been able to function at school and they've got parents who care about their education? Because what is really interesting is ethnic minority children, again, some particular ethnic minority children, again, it's just to me, this has all got sod all to do with ethnicity or race. It's usually to do with heritage and culture and family units. There are some, you know, Indian, Chinese kids, West African kids, they're doing really, really well at school. Afro-Caribbean kids, particularly boys, not so much. Bangladeshi kids, Pakistani kids, not so much. But other kids, there are groups of ethnic minorities who can be from the same economic group. They can be living on the same council estate, and their kids are doing well, and the white working class kids and some other ethnic minorities are doing badly. That fundamentally, I mean, have we got racist teachers who don't care about some of them, or is it down to, actually, it's not even what's happening in the schools, it is what's happening at home, and it's what's happening particularly, you know, with families?
It's an incredibly rich mix, and you're absolutely right. we need to stop talking about ethnic minority as if this is some kind of cohesive whole.
Yeah.
You know, different groups. What you do find in terms of some of the ethnic groups you've just identified is that the ethnic groups that underperform most in the system are those who are the most economically disadvantaged.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we find, you know, my sociologist friends called it intersectionality. It's where these different things meet each other.
Yeah.
So it's where ethnicity and class and sometimes gender in some communities and so forth, when those things layer together, then actually what we see and continue to see is that particular groups of children are much less likely to progress.
And but poverty and family background are two of the biggest indicators, aren't they? But again, we've seen whether it's targets at university or targets, whether it's job hiring for jobs at say the BBC or pretty much anywhere, a lot of targeting of ethnic minority kids to improve quote diversity. No one really very concerned about, white working class kids. Well, they look the same as the white middle class kids, so no one notices. But actually, they're being left on the scrap heap. And actually, when you look at the results, they're the ones who are doing the worst in their grades at school, GCSE, not going on to do A-levels. Therefore, no chance of getting into university and perhaps starting a better life.
Well, I think most universities now are much more sensitive in how they address the issue of ensuring that they widen participation, that they get more young people from non-traditional backgrounds progressing into higher education. I think it's interesting. You started by saying you think that too many young people...
Yes, by a long way. It's a complete waste of their time.
Now, I'm going to enjoy disagreeing with you there because I don't think you can have too much education. I don't think you can be too learned, and I don't think being learned doesn't mean that that can't be...
I don't think they are getting an education. I think a lot of the courses at university are a complete waste of their time. I know people who've got kids. I know people who, when I was at university even, and it's a long time ago, they did virtually nothing, like one essay a term. You're not getting an education.
Yeah.
You're just getting drunk, or you're getting drunk and getting into debt. It's a waste of your time.
Well, look, I'm not going to endorse that on national TV, especially with one son at
I
university.
got drunk and got an education. It's worthwhile.
But what I think we should bear in mind is actually one of the things that university experience does, and it certainly did because I was the first in my family to go to university, is it opens you up to middle class networks and contacts and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Okay, and so let's not underrate that.
I understand that. My husband, again, he'd left school at 16, worked at a paper factory, went to uni later. Absolutely life-changing for him to go to university. In terms of the people he met and the aspiration and everything. And my own parents, grammar school, working class kids, went to. I absolutely understand that. However, at that time, people weren't getting into 50 grand's worth of debt to do it.
That's true, although it's a different issue. But here's the point, Julia. Very often, right, those who say too many kids are going to university have themselves been to university.
Oh, yes. And expect their own children to.
Their parents went to university, their children are going to university, and their grandchildren are going to university. And what I find difficult about that is they're talking about other people's children.
No, here's my thing. Here's the key stat. Less than 50% of kids are able to get 5 basic GCSEs, a decent grade these days. And yet we think that those 50%, they're able to go to university. I think you're making university meaningless at that point. But I want to tackle you on one other thing, because to hit apparently government diversity targets, and we've been hearing about this in America, and there's been lots of lawsuits about it. But figures from the admissions bodies UCAS show many sort of well-respected universities are accepting severely underperforming students, even those getting only 3 E's or DDE at university as at A level, into study pretty serious courses because they want to fulfil equality, diversity and inclusion targets. Now, that's an absolute nonsense. I don't care what colour your skin is. You should have to get the same grades to get on the same course, shouldn't you?
Well, there's of course, grades have to have integrity. And I'm sure that if we were to drill down into this data, we might find 1 or 2 courses at 1 or 2 universities where this is the case. But it is absolutely not the norm. You'll have a lot of nervous children on Wednesday evening waiting for that result.
I've got mine. Mine's getting hers on Thursday as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and our younger is getting his GCSEs. So let's not, by talking about soft grades or whatever, undermine the efforts that children are making.
No, no. Giving them soft grades undermines them, not being honest about it. Being honest about anything doesn't undermine anyone.
I agree, but I think we have to look really carefully at the two debates we've had this morning.
Yeah.
On the one hand, the white working class boys not getting the grades, and then later saying the grades are too soft. We can't kind of have that both ways.
The answer is better parenting, better schooling, so the kids are getting the right grades and not lying to kids saying you're up to this when you're not. We know that the dropout rate when kids haven't got the grades from universities is sky high. They leave, no degree, massive debt, and another year or two not in the jobs market. I think we're selling our kids a lie. But Tony, it's been so interesting talking to you. You have such an interest, and I really, really hope you'll come back on again very, very soon. Former Chief Examiner, author of Lessons from Lockdown, Tony Breslin. About 30 seconds to Sam Armstrong to have his say on this.
Do you know, I just feel so sorry for young working class white kids who grow up in failing schools, on estates that are often ridden with bad influences by kids that are trying to lead them off into drugs, into crime, and all sorts of nonsense that makes it really, really tough to grow up as a kid. To then come to the end of your education and to be told by the system that you are worthless, that you're a problem, that you've privileged, you've had it all easy, and everyone else has had it tougher. It must be sickening to reach adulthood and be told that. It's so awful.
No wonder
and
so
evil
many
and
are so
wrong.
angry about it. Exactly. 12:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to find out what happens when you're over 70 and you fail an eye test, whether or not you should still be allowed on the roads. We're going to talk to the president of the AA, that's Edmund King. He's up next. This is Talk.
Thank you to the 10,000 plus people who signed my petition, says Julia Braverman, objecting to these migrant hotel plans. Very pleased that the Home Office has listened to local people and local Conservative councillors and dropped plans to put illegal migrants and asylum seekers in the heart of Waterlooville.
You want to close the hotels, the government's closing the hotels.
Yeah, but they're also putting them into...
The demand was close the hotels, government's doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure a lack of social housing as the net result of that is something people are necessarily going to welcome.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning. No, good afternoon. Sorry, 12:51. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I said afternoon, I say morning now. You know how it is. I don't know, maybe I've had too much to drink to be on air, or certainly to drive. I haven't had a drink, I promise you. But drivers over the age of 70 who fail eye tests could, if a new law is brought in by the government, actually lose their driving licence in a major shake-up of motoring rules. They're also looking at reducing the level of alcohol you can have in your blood from where it currently is in England to the level in Scotland, which would rather limit your ability to drink and drive. I would say that's not a bad thing. But certainly my guest in the studio, Sam Armstrong, who lives in the countryside, says this could actually be a very big deal for pubs pubs in rural areas. Plus, we are looking at drivers with getting penalty points if their passengers fail to put on a seatbelt, and tougher penalties for uninsured drivers as well. So is this going to be welcomed by the president of the AA motoring organisation, Edmund King? Well, let's find out. A very good afternoon to you, Edmund.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Let's start with this eye test. Now, those of us who've got parents in their 80s have been wondering whether they should still be on the road, certainly for long journeys. Do you support eye tests? And should it start at 70 or a bit later?
Yeah, when we look at it currently, Julia, you only have an eye test when you're about to take your test, and you actually have to read a number plate from 20 meters.
Yeah.
And then you wait till you're 70, and then you have a self-declaration. So you fill in a form, say your eyesight's okay, your health is okay. So that's how it currently stands. If you look at the actual figures of who's at risk on the road, the bottom end, it is new drivers, and 1 in 5 new drivers crash within a first year of passing their test.
When you say crash, are we talking a little prang, or are we talking something more serious?
pretty serious.
And are these largely, with all due respect to the boys, are these largely the boy racers?
Well, it is more the boys than the girls, indeed. Then at the other end of the spectrum, when you get 70, drivers are actually pretty safe at 70. The 70-year-olds are safer than the boy racers.
Yeah.
It's only when it gets to 80, and more markedly at 85, that the collisions per kilometre driven actually spikes up. So I think you could argue for 80-year-olds, for 85-year-olds, a compulsory eye test would be pretty
That would
sensible.
be, and also they would be in their interest if they're not safe. I mean, that would certainly be the case. What about the drink driving rules? I mean, I think most people find these things utterly incomprehensible. And if you look online, like, how much can you drink to be under 35 micrograms per 100 millilitre of breath, down to 22, which is what Scotland and the rest of Europe pretty much has. We have the highest limit in the EU. Most people don't even know what that means, but it's roughly, I think, around 2 pints for a man and roughly 1 pint for a woman. But that's over 4 units of alcohol for a man, and that's more than 2 units for a woman. I wouldn't drink 2 units of alcohol and get behind the wheel of a car. I'm not a good enough driver to do that. I would genuinely consider that to be reckless.
Yeah, I mean, we always say the best advice: if you're going to drive, don't drink. If you're going to drink, don't drive.
Which is easy now. So I live in central London. Very easy. Call an Uber,
Public
get the tube home.
Yeah.
Sam Armstrong should be making the point. He lives in the rural area. Local people, they go to the local pub. The pubs are barely surviving as it is. And actually, there aren't taxis. There's just no other way of getting around. And people would like to have a little bit of a drink. And are they a danger on the roads?
Well, it is interesting. In Scotland, when they reduced the limit a few years ago, the studies I've looked at, one in the Lancet, haven't actually shown a big reduction in deaths or serious collisions. So I think with any of these initiatives, it's not just changing the law, you need enforcement. And the thing that underpins all of these things, whether it's seatbelt wearing, drink driving, drug driving, etc., you need more traffic police. And
are there any left?
Well, there's been a 20% reduction in the last decade, and sometimes you can go on a 250-mile journey without seeing one marked police car. So for all these initiatives, Julia, they need to be enforced, whether it is a lower drink drive limit.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there are a lot of people who go, I mean, I genuinely had so many, largely men, saying, I'm such a good driver. Even with a couple of pints in me, I'm a better driver than lots of drivers who are completely sober. It doesn't impair my ability to drive. But actually, there's loads of studies. So actually, when they actually do a scientific experiment, it has, lengthened their reaction time and things like that. People just don't realise it.
Yeah, indeed, that is the case, and it depends on your metabolic rate, how big you are, all of these factors, and that's why it's really dangerous to drink up to the limit, because on a bad day, you might actually go over the limit. So that's certainly not safe.
But again, that's just the legalities. And I think there's a morality related to getting behind the wheel of a car where a big metal box with an engine which can go quite fast, which could kill somebody if you make a mistake, whether you in the car or your passengers or someone on the road, that you have a duty of care to be, don't take medication which makes you drowsy, don't be tired, don't get in the car if you've only had a couple of hours sleep, you may as well have had a couple of pints. But we have a duty, there's a moral aspect to this, isn't there?
No, I think we do, but quite often with drink driving, morals doesn't come into it. No. It isn't people who are just under the limit, just over the limit. They are twice the legal limit.
They know what they've done.
They know what they've done, and quite often they re-offend. And those people have got a drink problem rather than a driving problem, and that needs to be addressed in another way. Removing the licence for longer, with rehab, with police actually enforcing.
Well, not removing the licence for longer. Certainly, I think 2 strikes and you're out. It's very easy not to. I've never drink driven, so I'm pretty sure it's easy to do. You just don't have anyone in a car. What do you think about penalty points if for the driver if their passenger fails to wear a seatbelt, and also tougher penalties for uninsured drivers? Again, you've got to catch them in the first place.
I mean, I think on seatbelts though, it is the simplest thing we could do to reduce deaths. You've got a 50% better chance of surviving a crash by wearing a seatbelt, and almost 40% of younger drivers, particularly in the back of the car, passengers, aren't wearing a seatbelt, which I find incredibly.
It's an absolute no-brainer for me.
In a car park without putting my belt on.
No, and also lots of the cars just have beepy noises until you put it on anyway.
Indeed. So I do think better enforcement of seatbelt laws, but also, more campaigning, more awareness. And at the AA Trust, we had a campaign with Basingstoke Town, and Ian Wright, the footballer, endorsed the campaign. So we need more of those kind of awareness campaigns, because it's so simple.
I think everyone's views on this are so affected by their locality and their experience. My views are mostly affected by this, by having been a news reporter in the East End of London and going to Coroner's Court. And on a Tuesday morning, having to sit with the families of those the parents of those children who've been knocked down by a car, either speeding or drink driver, and that's kind of decided my views on this one forever, I have to say. Edmund King, pleasure to have your company, president of the AA. I know, Sam Armstrong, you want to come back in on this briefly because you defend the right of people to drink that little bit more, not drunk.
Yeah, because there's absolutely no evidence that doing this will make anything better. There's ample evidence it will make a load of things worse. And as much as I feel sorry for victims of car crashes, I'm not just going to do something just because it makes me feel better about it.
Well, everyone always talks about one less death. Well, no, I'm sorry. Then we'd have a speed limit of 20 miles per hour on a motorway, but we want to get places.
Correct.
And it's